Chapter 1009. Just as the fire snake's tongue was about to reach into the water serpent's abdomen and suck out the red light, the strange serpent suddenly swung its tail and extinguished the fire snake's tongue with a pop. Chu Hailan giggled and said, "Lu Daoyou's water attribute skills have reached the pinnacle. What's the use of this fire Azura's fire seed? Why don't you give it to me?" Although Chu Hailan was joking, her hands were not idle at all. She flicked her hands one after another, and each time a flame burst out, it formed a wriggling fire snake in the air and surrounded the strange serpent. Chu Hailan knew that this was the best time to gain an advantage from Lu Ping. If Lu Ping recovered even a little bit, she would no longer have the slightest hope. Although Lu Ping had used his abundant spiritual ether to exhaust the fire Azura to death, it also consumed a lot of his spiritual ether, but this did not mean that Lu Ping had no power to fight back. Seeing that dozens of fire snakes had surrounded it, the strange serpent opened its mouth and spat out a huge wave, extinguishing most of the dozens of fire snakes in front of it. Chu Hailan's expression changed, but she immediately noticed that the strange serpent, which was originally 30 feet long, had shrunk to another 15 feet after spitting out this mouthful of water. Her face was full of smiles again, and she said, "Why are you so stubborn? Why don't you give this fire seed to me, and I'll write off the favor you asked me to help earlier?" As she spoke, the remaining dozens of fire snakes had their heads and tails severed, but their severed bodies grew back into new fire snakes, once again surrounding the shortened strange serpent. Lu Ping smiled and said, "You really know how to pick a time. Are you sure that I don't have the power to fight back?" Chu Hailan's beautiful eyes flickered with suspicion, but when she looked at the flame that was still stubbornly flickering in the strange dragon's belly, she immediately regained her confidence and said, "You and I both know that this fire seed must be extraordinary. Even if we meet other fire Azuras in the future, we may not be able to obtain such a strange treasure. If we don't fight for it, we will regret it in the future." In the battle between Lu Ping and the fire Azura, the endless tricks that he used not only shocked the fire Azura, but also terrified Chu Hailan. However, she was unwilling to give up this fire seed that could simulate various forms of spiritual fire. "Fine, if you didn't intercept the fire Azura in the end, I would only be able to heavily injure it at most, and it would be extremely difficult to kill it. In this way, you do indeed have the qualifications to fight for it, but you're taking advantage of its misfortune." Chu Hailan smiled proudly and said, "If not, how would I dare to compete with you?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "That's right, if that's the case, just fight for it." Chu Hailan smiled and said, "You're an arrow at the end of its flight, and yet you still want to show off." After saying that, dozens of fire snakes pounced and fought with the strange dragon. Although the strange flood dragon's body was huge, it was formed from ordinary seawater that was infused with Lu Ping's true essence. Thus, it was innately inferior to the strange flood dragon. On the other hand, although Chu Hailan's fire snakes were petite, they were agile. Moreover, the flames that formed them were also extraordinary. The two were entangled in battle. Although the monstrous flood dragon relied on its powerful legs to extinguish more than 10 fire snakes, it was also greatly exhausted. In a short period of time, it was only 7 or 8 feet long, and the red light in its abdomen was becoming more and more obvious. From the beginning to the end, the two of them didn't attack each other. They only fought for the fire seed that was swallowed by Lu Ping's water jiao. This could be considered a fair method of competition in the cultivation world to avoid unequal distribution of spoils that could lead to vendettas. Seeing that she was about to succeed, Chu Hailan became more and more complacent. She kept smiling at Lu Ping, but her hands did not slow down at all. As she performed a series of incantations, sufficient spiritual vitality was constantly injected into the bodies of the fire snakes through the air under the guidance of her divine thoughts, making the attacks of the fire snakes more and more fierce. On the other hand, Lu Ping controlled the water snake with divine thoughts from beginning to end, and did not inject any spiritual vitality into it at all. Seeing that the water snake was becoming smaller and smaller under the siege of the fire snakes, Chu Hailan became more and more complacent, but Lu Ping appeared to be extremely indifferent from beginning to end, as if he did not care at all. However, the more it was like this, the less confident Chu Hailan felt. Although she had the upper hand and had been very proud of herself to provoke Lu Ping, in fact, she wanted to force out Lu Ping's hidden methods, so that she could be prepared. However, Lu Ping did not comply with her wishes. From beginning to end, it was a severely injured water snake that fought with her, not even injecting spiritual vitality into it. Could it be that he was really an arrow at the end of its flight? Even Chu Hailan herself did not want to believe this conclusion. Pa! With a splash, the water snake that had already shrunk to 3 feet could no longer resist the siege of the fire snakes. One of the fire snakes took the opportunity to swing its tail and smash the head of the water snake into a splash. The remaining 10 or so fire snakes burrowed into the body of the water snake that had lost its head. At the same time, the fire snake that had just disappeared reappeared and tried to suck in the body of the fire snake. Seeing that the fire seed was about to fall into Chu Hailan's hand, the headless water snake suddenly exploded, and the mist scattered in all directions, stirring up a wave. Although the force of the wave was not very strong, it just happened to block all of Chu Hailan's attacks. At this moment, there was a sudden whistling sound that cut through the air. Chu Hailan's expression changed, and just as she was about to move, she saw a small person appear in front of the fire seed. The small person grabbed the fire seed in his hand, and then stretched out his hand to pull out the willow sword on his back and slashed, severing the 10 or so fire snakes and the flaming fire snake's tongue in the air. This is cheating! Seeing that the fire seed in her hand was snatched away by Lu Zhaoping, Chu Hailan's face suddenly became angry. You have the help of an avatar, how is this fair competition? Lu Ping looked at the maddened Chu Hailan with a smile, and spread out his palm, and the Linglong wine cauldron drilled out of the space door and fell right into his palm. A little girl leaned on the side of the wine cauldron and made a face at Chu Hailan, and then immediately disappeared along with the wine cauldron in Lu Ping's palm. At the same time, the 2 flying swords also appeared from the space door, and after circling around Lu Ping twice, they also sank into Lu Ping's body. Chu Hailan's mood suddenly stagnated, and when she finally suppressed her anger with great difficulty, she said with great dissatisfaction, What, do you still want to threaten me? Lu Ping said slowly, Don't forget that when you attacked just now, my true essence was greatly depleted. You can be said to be taking advantage of my misfortune. Since that's the case, why can't I join the battle with my avatar? Don't forget, from the beginning to the end, I did not inject a trace of Jin Yuan into the water dragon. Everyone just relied on their own ability. Chu Hailan angrily shook her hand. Anyway, the fire seed is already in your hands, naturally you can do whatever you want. Lu Xiaohai smashed the head of a great azura with a hammer, and then flew out the other copper hammer, smashing 3 minor repairs azuras in a row, and looked around, but there were no more azuras in his field of vision. The giant white-fronted tiger raised its head to the sky and roared, causing the entire Soundwave Island to tremble. Oh whoa! Awesome! Awesome! Oh whoa! Damn Xiaohai, stop shouting! Who doesn't know that your voice is the loudest? Lu Linger covered her ears with her hands, jumped out from the other side of Hearing Waves Island, and shouted at Lu Xiaohai from afar. Her sharp voice could not even cover the roar of the giant white-fronted tiger. Lu Xiaohai's voice was not only louder. Qi Lianying, wearing the golden rock cloud robe, walked behind Lu Linger, and looked at Lu Xiaohai, who was waving a pair of huge copper hammers, and could not help but laugh. Is this the white-fronted tiger clan? It seems that these years, the number of monster clan followers under him has increased a lot. That shy little girl's background is not simple, right? De Bayo came out of nowhere and said, You mean the peach blossom little sister? You should have seen her. Do you remember the spirit monster peach tree that boss obtained? Qi Lianying was surprised. The spirit monster peach tree? She also transformed? Isn't it said that it is the hardest for spirit monsters to transform? De Bao proudly patted his chest and said, Of course I had a fortuitous encounter. Following boss, who among us has less fortuitous encounters? Big Sister Ing, when have you ever seen a core forging stage spirit-seeking mouse? Qi Lianing giggled and said. Other than you, I have not seen a core forging stage spirit-seeking mouse, but I have heard of a blood condensation stage spirit-seeking mouse called Little White. De Bao's face turned red, and he said, Big Sister Ing, who did you hear this from? Then, as if thinking of something, De Bao gritted his teeth and said, Yes, it must be the bastard friend of Boss Ji Xianxian. Last time, this guy actually sneaked into the underground auction of Huanli Island, and saw Little White, who had already swallowed the transformation pill, hosting the auction. After that, he wanted to take Little White away no matter what. In the end, if I did not invite sister-in-law over, this guy would have succeeded. When Qi Lianing heard De Bao mention Hu Lily, the smile on her face immediately disappeared. With how smart De Bao was, he was first-rate in observing people's words and body language. How could he not figure out what Qi Lianing was thinking? It was just that he deliberately said it this way, not without the intention of reminding her. Lu Ping slowly descended from the sky above Soundwave Island, and Qi Lianing stared blankly at Lu Ping. Seeing that the situation was not good, De Bao hurriedly said, I will go check the treasury with that guy Wu Yan. After saying that, he dived headfirst into the ground and disappeared without a trace. Qi Lianing smiled at Lu Ping, who had landed in front of her, and said, Fortunately, you came in time, or your foundation would only be left with a deserted island. Lu Ping smiled and said, As long as I'm here, this island is lost. It's not a big deal. It's just 3 blood azuras, why would they cause such a huge commotion? Qi Lianing also shook her head strangely, and said, I don't know either. This siege came suddenly, without the slightest sign. If it wasn't for Xuanchu's vigilance, I'm afraid that even the island's protective formation would not have been activated in time. Lu Ping turned his head to look into the distance and said, The battle here is in full swing. Logically speaking, the cultivators of the 3 families' island on the 2 nearby islands should also know about it. However, when I looked from the sky above Soundwave Island, it was lifeless there. Did they also encounter a great calamity? Chapter 10:10. A ray of light flashed, and Yin Xianchu descended from it. How is it? Lu Ping asked. Yin Xuanchu's expression was ugly. He shook his head and said, They're all dead. All the cultivators on the island have turned into dried corpses. The spirit veins have disappeared, and their storage artifacts have been shattered. Not a single item containing spiritual qi is left. Many cultivators had lifeless eyes when they died. Clearly, they were devoured by a demonic cultivator. Sure enough, it's not just Soundwave Island that's being besieged. Fortunately, Soundwave Island withstood the siege, while the other 2 islands have fallen. Qi Lianing said doubtfully, That's not right. If the other 2 islands were also besieged, Mara's attack on Soundwave Island would have been blocked. They should have come to help. How come? Lu Ping had a bad feeling in his heart. He suddenly raised his head and said, The middle-sized spirit stone vein on the nameless island is most likely dead. Qi Lianing said, I'll send someone to investigate. Lu Ping stretched out a hand to stop them and said, Both of you are injured. Besides, if the spirit stone mine on the nameless island is really occupied by Mo Luo, the rest of us will only be courting death if we go there. Let's heal our injuries first. Lu Ping whistled toward the forest in the distance. A green wand soared into the sky and flew out of Soundwave Island toward the nameless island in the west. Not far away, Wian, Honging, Yi Buki, Madame Du, and her daughter, Du Jiawei, all came to greet Lu Ping. Lu Ping encouraged them one by one and arranged for them to first restore the island's protective formation. Then, he counted the losses and comforted and compensated the families of the injured and fallen cultivators. Yin Xianchu had already disappeared after getting some healing pills from Lu Ping. Lu Ping and Qi Lianing returned to the cave residence that Qi Lianing had always kept for Lu Ping. Lu Ping's cave abode was the source of the entire spirit vein on Tingtao Island. Now, the density of the spirit qi here was close to that of a mid-sized spirit vein, which was obviously the result of Qi Lianing's painstaking efforts. Lu Ping looked at Qi Lianing's delicate face. He didn't know what it looked like under the seal. he sighed and said. You are still injured. Rest for a while. You will be in charge of everything on this island. I won't be staying here for long. Qi Lianning's face darkened. These injuries are nothing. With the protection of your Dharma treasure, I didn't get injured again. Lu Ping nodded and said, This time, I came to the East Sea under the orders of an elder of the sect to kill someone. I'm afraid I'll have to leave soon. Lu Ping paused. Qi Lianning stared at his face, so Lu Ping had no choice but to continue. I'm afraid I won't be able to accompany you to the North Sea for a while. I wonder how much of your memory has been restored. Should the seal on your face be removed now? Qi Lianning touched her face and smiled. Ever since I woke up, the first person I saw was Aunt May. This face has been with me for more than 100 years. If it suddenly changes, I'm afraid even I won't be able to tell which one is me. The two looked at each other in silence. Qi Lianning suddenly smiled and said, You, Yin Xianchu, and Ji Xianxian probably have some guesses about my identity, right? Lu Ping was a little surprised. He then sighed and said, Don't worry. Just return to the North Sea when the time comes. This may involve the grudges between the elders of the sect, but Jinling has me to protect you. Even Martial Granduncle Tianxiang won't let you suffer any grievances. A smile flickered in Qi Lianning's eyes. She said, That's not necessarily true. If Mysterious Fox Sage comes to trouble you, what will you do? Lu Ping was dumbfounded. The news that Lu Qiner sent back was very fast. The nameless island has been occupied by Mara. There's a bloody Mara's aura on it, so I don't dare to go near it. However, the Mara there is moving on a large scale. Groups of Mara are flying towards the North Sea. After receiving the news, Lu Ping called for Yin Xianchu and Qi Lianning. At the same time, he also called for Wu Yan, Hong Ying, and Yi Buqi. He originally wanted to call Yu Jiangrui, but he found out that Yu Jiangrui had died in order to save his disciple. His disciple was none other than the Sima who wanted to learn alchemy under Lu Ping. Lu Ping told everyone the news that Lu Qiner had received. He said, Qiner's news has confirmed my guess. Mara is moving north on a large scale. The Nameless Island, Soundwave Island, and 2 of the 3 islands that are occupied by the 2 forces happen to be on the route of Mara's advance. That's why they were destroyed. Yin Xianchu also realized something at this moment. He said, Could it be that Mara is moving north on a large scale because of the giant spirit stone veins and large spirit stone veins in the depths of the fallen secret realm near the Phantom City? Lu Ping nodded and said, Other than the temptation of these veins, I really can't think of anything else that could attract Mara to move north on a large scale. Just as Lu Ping said this, he suddenly sensed something in his divine will. At this moment, Qi Lianning and Yin Xianchu also sensed something. Almost at the same time, they waved their hands, and 2 telepathic swords flew into the cave. After the 2 of them checked the contents, Yin Xianchu gestured for Qi Lianning to speak first. Qi Lianning nodded and said in a low voice, I just received news that Mara is moving north on a large scale. Almost half of the islands under the Northern Alliance's control have been wiped out, and there are many casualties. It is said that at least 7 or 8 Dharma adepts of the Northern Alliance and its affiliated forces have fallen, including 2 mid-Dharma adepts. Everyone's hearts sank. Lu Ping frowned and said, How can the Northern Alliance be so weak? Half of the islands have been taken down. How is this the performance of a large sect? Mara's large scale northward is not aimed at the Northern Alliance. As long as the island's protective matrix is strong, I think Mara will not delay his purpose of moving north because of attacking these islands. How can they suffer so many casualties? Qi Lianning looked at Lu Ping and said, These years, although the Northern Alliance is still known as the second largest sect in the East Sea, the internal affairs of the Northern Alliance have been unstable. There are often rumors of internal strife among the high-level adepts, and there are even rumors that the Northern Alliance may split up. The subordinate forces of the Northern Alliance have also formed their own cliques and are in a state of disunity. This time, they have suffered such heavy losses. Lu Ping did not dare to believe it. The existence of the Northern Alliance in the East Sea was a sect with a long history. How could it have fallen to such a state in just a few hundred years? Lu Ping turned to look at Yin Xianchu. Yin Xianchu said, I have news from the Overturned Seas sect. The entire Overturned Seas sect seems to be retreating towards the north of the fallen mystic realm. Lu Ping suddenly stood up and said, I have to return to Jingzhi Island immediately. I will leave everything on Hearing Waves Island to everyone. Set up the island protecting formation as soon as possible, then activate the illusory formation to hide the entire Hearing Waves Island. Although this will consume a lot of energy, as long as we don't attract the attention of Mara, I believe that Hearing Waves Island will not be discovered. However, do not remove the illusory formation before the teleportation formation between Hearing Waves Island and Jingzhi Island is opened. I believe that Mara's large-scale invasion of the north will end soon, and the crisis will be resolved by then. Also, do not provoke the Spirit Stone Mine on the Nameless Island. Even if Mara's large-scale invasion is aimed at Phantom City, this mine will still cause a portion of Mara to stay there. Lu Ping said and was about to leave Soundwave Island. But unexpectedly, as soon as he stepped out of the cave dwelling, a little girl stopped him and said, Junior greets Uncle Tian Ping. Lu Ping was a little confused by the uncle. He looked at the little girl and suddenly understood. You are Du Jialuo's sister, the little fox demon? The little girl was happy to see that Lu Ping still recognized her. My brother is Du Jialuo. He is now your disciple. But my name is Du Jiaowei. Lu Ping thought that Du Jiaowei wanted to ask him about Du Jialuo. He said, Little fox demon has grown up. Not bad. You are in the late blood condensation stage and have a solid foundation. But your brother is now in the core forging stage. You have to work hard. Don't let him fall too far behind. Unexpectedly, the little girl shook her head and said anxiously, I've already heard about you from Brother Xian Xian. I just want to ask how Brother Xian Xian is doing now. Has he been injured by that blood Shura? Lu Ping almost choked to death by the words Brother Xian Xian. He finally suppressed the churning in his stomach. When he turned around, he saw that Yin Xianchu, Qi Lianying, and the others all had strange expressions on their faces. He cursed Xian Xian in his heart. But he still said in a pleasant tone, Don't worry. That guy's life is very tough. He won't die. He will be back after a while. Seeing that Du Jiaowei had left happily, Lu Ping waved at everyone and disappeared in a flash. When Lu Ping left Soundwave Island, Lu Qina let out a long cry and circled the island twice. Seeing that the island's protective formation had been reactivated, it slowly turned transparent. The entire island was hidden from the sea. Only then did it carry Lu Ping in the direction of Jingzhi Island. Chu Hailan was temporarily left behind by Lu Ping on Soundwave Island. When Lu Ping flew over Nameless Island, he suddenly sensed Jade Shura's aura. Both sides retreated as soon as their consciousnesses came into contact. They seemed to be afraid of each other, but also seemed to have their own motives. They did not want to fight each other at this time. Lu Ping sat cross-legged on Lu Qina's back, holding a formation plate in his hand. His inner yuan communicated with the power of space and slowly poured into the plate. There was another similar plate on Soundwave Island. This was a pair of teleportation matrices that were connected to each other. On the way to Jingzhi Island, Lu Ping had to use the power of space to communicate with the matrices in his hand at all times. Only then would he be able to set up a teleportation matrix that connected the two matrices. This was the method of setting up a teleportation matrix. At the same time, it was the reason why a treasure ship was needed to set up a teleportation matrix from the overseas training world to the Central Plains. To set up a teleportation matrix, one had to personally experience the journey from the overseas training world to the Central Plains. Along the way, one had to use the inner yuan of a Dharma adept to communicate with the power of space. Only then would it be possible to set up a teleportation matrix that connected the two. Chapter 10-11. The setting up of the teleportation formation required a Dharma adept to carry a teleportation formation plate with him and communicate with the power of space along the way. Although this was not a problem for Lu Ping, the only problem was that the process could not be interrupted. Even so, Lu Ping was bored out of his mind, so he took out two of his biggest gains from his trip to Hearing Waves Island. The first was naturally the invisible flying sword that Lu Zhaoping had obtained after killing the water Shura. This flying sword was completely colorless and transparent. Only when it was attacked by other treasures and invaded by the opponent's inner yuan would it appear in different colors because of the opponent's inner yuan. Moreover, this hidden sword had excellent invisibility. No matter how one looked at it, its quality was better than the water spirit sword in Lu Ping's hands. It was just that this hidden sword was a companion spiritual treasure. Although it had been saved after Lu Ping had killed the blood Shura, in Lu Ping's hands, it could only be used as an ordinary treasure. As for its invisibility effect, it could not be used at all. Lu Ping knew that this was because this companion spiritual treasure had not been modified. This caused the hidden sword to treat all inner yuan other than the fallen blood Shura as an invasion from the outside. Therefore, after Lu Ping's inner yuan was injected into the sword, not only did the hidden sword lose its invisibility effect, it became a flying sword of blue and purple with a hint of gold. Lu Ping reached out and summoned the blue water spirit sword. He did not know if the two could be combined. If it was successful, perhaps the hidden sword's quality could be improved by another level. If the blood Shura's companion spiritual treasure had only been modified, no matter how good its quality was, it could at most survive the first thunder trial and become a first-class spiritual treasure. To survive the second thunder trial, the spiritual treasure's quality had to be improved again. If this invisible hidden sword could be combined with the water spirit sword, although its quality would definitely be greatly improved and it would not be a problem to survive the first thunder trial, it would be difficult to say for the second thunder trial. The second treasure was naturally the Fire Azura's fire seed that even Chu Hailan didn't hesitate to fight over with Lu Ping. Lu Ping had thought he was lucky enough to get two primordial spirit treasures at once, but the Fire Shura had died and only the Origin Tinder was left behind. The companion spiritual treasure that Lu Ping was looking forward to didn't actually have the ability to simulate various spirit fires. It could only greatly increase the power of various fire god arts that Fire Azura cast. The Fire Shura's attack was strong enough, but the accompanying spiritual treasure in its hand was strictly an auxiliary spiritual treasure, not an offensive one. The treasure that could simulate various forms of spirit fires was the Origin Tinder left behind by the Fire Shura after its death. This Origin Tinder was actually like the Dharma form in a cultivator's core space, but compared to the primordial spirit treasure in Mara's hand, the origin in their bodies was more difficult to obtain. In this case, Lu Ping's luck this time was better than getting two primordial spirit treasures. The Origin Tinder was suspended in Lu Ping's palm, but Lu Ping did not dare to use his real essence to enter it, because Lu Ping's water attribute real essence would not only be repelled by the Origin Tinder, but would also be immediately damaged by the erosion of Lu Ping's real essence. Lu Ping had already tried it once, and the Origin Tinder, which was already dying, suddenly became even dimmer after coming into contact with Lu Ping's real essence. Lu Ping thought about it, and put the Origin Tinder on top of a spirit stone. Then, Lu Ping saw that the spirit stone began to melt like a candle, and the spirit chi contained in it was absorbed by the Origin Tinder, without the slightest leakage. The Origin Tinder absorbed the spirit stone in a flash, but because of the invasion of Lu Ping's real essence, the dim Origin Tinder still could not recover to its previous state. Seeing this, Lu Ping put 7 or 8 spirit stones under the Origin Tinder. After the Origin Tinder swallowed them one by one, the dim Origin Tinder seemed to recover a little. Lu Ping shouted. This was really a bottomless pit of spirit stones. If this thing really had many magical effects like before, who knew how many spirit stones it would take to support these magical effects one by one? Lu Ping pondered for a moment, and made up his mind. He took out a top-grade spirit stone and placed it under the fire seed. The flame on the Origin Tinder, which had always been calm, immediately jumped. Lu Ping cursed inwardly, and his divine sense quickly invaded the flame. Suddenly, a flame appeared in the origin tinder, and under the control of his divine sense, the flame constantly changed. These were the 5 kinds of flames that Lu Ping had seen in the hands of the fire Azura. When Lu Qin'er carried Lu Ping to Jingzhi Island, the time it took them was about the same as Ji Xianxian's wooden bird puppet. This surprised Lu Ping a little. Ji Xianxian was indeed a grandmaster puppeteer. But then again, when Lu Ping thought about it, Ji Xianxian had secretly kept a lot of good stuff for himself when he created his avatar. It wouldn't be right if the wooden bird puppet was slower. When Lu Ping met Tian Kong Laozu had already known about Mara's large-scale northward march. Lu Ping was not too surprised about this. After all, Junling had been operating on Jingzhi Island for a long time. It would be unreasonable to say that there were no hidden forces in the East China Sea. Lu Ping handed the array disc in his hand to Taoist Xianping. The 2 third-generation disciples, Wei Xuanheng and Su Xianping, were old acquaintances of Lu Ping when he first entered Fei Ling Island. However, as disciples of Taoist Xian Su, they had been stationed on Jingzhi Island and rarely returned to the North Sea. Therefore, they were not prominent among the third-generation disciples of North Sea Junling. However, Lu Ping knew that the cultivation achievements of these 2 people were considered outstanding among the third-generation disciples of Junling. Wei Xuanheng's cultivation had broken through the late core forging realm. He had sparred with Du Feng before. Although he was no match for Du Feng's murderous swordsmanship that he had honed over the years, his solid cultivation was still recognized by Du Feng. As for Taoist Xianping's cultivation, although it had fallen a little and he was only 1 step away from breaking through to the late core forging realm, Taoist Xianping was an array master. His attainments in arrays and prohibitions were not inferior to Black Fox's. It was only because Jingzhi Island was isolated in the East China Sea that the island's protective array formation needed him to guard it. That was why he had been staying on Jingzhi Island all this time. Otherwise, with Taoist Xianping's attainments in arrays, he would have been sent back to repair the treasure ship long ago. When Tiankong Laozu saw that Lu Ping had returned, he knew that the siege on Jingzhi Island had been resolved, so he said, "You're back at the right time. From the current situation, this group of Mara is most likely heading for the Spirit Stone Mine in Phantom City. Phantom City has already sent out an edict, requesting all sects that have a share of the Spirit Stone Mine in Phantom City to send Dharma adepts there to help guard it. This is to prevent Mara from taking over the Spirit Stone Mine there." Lu Ping knew the importance of the Spirit Stone Mine there. After all, it was the only large Spirit Stone Mine in the hands of the humans overseas. In addition, there were 4 other branches that were also large mines. Such an important place was related to the supply of spirit stones to the entire overseas training world. Naturally, they could not afford to lose it, so he said, "Do you want me to go on behalf of our sect?" Tiankong Laozu shook his head and said, "According to our sect's share of the mine, we need at least 1 mid-Dharma adept to go this time. So this time, the old man will go personally, but you will have to follow him as well." Lu Ping did not ask for the reason and nodded directly. However, Tiankong Laozu explained, "You will go with the old man. The main reason is that after the various sects have received their share of spirit stones, you will escort them back to the sect." Tiankong Laozu paused, then smiled and said, "This time, Mara is heading north on a large scale, and all the sects are gathered in Phantom City. Although there is a good chance of protecting the 5 large spirit stone mines, we still have to be careful. In the past, every 5 years the various sects would go to Phantom City to collect their share of spirit stones. One of the tasks of the old man guarding Jingzhi Island is to collect the spirit stones there on time. This time, not only will they be distributed early, but they will also be mined in excess during the battle with Mara." At this moment, Lu Ping seemed to have thought of something and asked, "Senior uncle, do you think that Zhang Shi will also go to Phantom City this time? After all, the Blue Sea sect has a share of the mine there." Tiankong Laozu already knew the purpose of Lu Ping's trip to the East Sea this time. Hearing this, he thought for a moment and said, "It's hard to say. The blue sea sect space in the perished land is a small island that is usually guarded by that little brat Dong Yun. At the last auction in Phantom City, our sect won a great victory and entered the top 5 of the medium-sized sects in one fell swoop, greatly increasing our share. The Blue Sea sect and Xianling sect both returned in defeat. Because Xianling sect has the support of the Crystal Palace, although their ranking dropped 1 place because of our sect, their losses are not that great. The Blue Sea sect, on the other hand, dropped 2 or 3 places. However, because of this, these 2 sects only need to send out 1 early Dharma adept. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Since they want to retrieve the Spirit Stone Mine, it's hard to say if Dong Yun Laozu is thinking the same thing as you. If Zhang Shi is on the island now, I'm afraid Dong Yun Laozu will also ask Zhang Shi to escort the Spirit Stone Mine back first." Tiankong Laozu thought for a moment and nodded. "That's true. At this time, Mara is heading north, and the perished land is in a state of panic. I don't think Dong Yun will be at ease leaving the Spirit Stone Mine in the hands of a core forging disciple." Tiankong Laozu saw the killing intent flashing in Lu Ping's eyes. He hesitated for a moment and said, "I won't say anything about working together to defeat the enemy, old man. Although you have defeated him before, it's not easy to kill him. Moreover, the situation in the perished land is changing rapidly. Mara, humans, and demons are everywhere. It's better to be careful not to let others take advantage of the situation. Disciple will remember Martial Uncle's words." Lu Ping nodded, but then he seemed to have thought of something. He chuckled and said, "Grand Martial Uncle, we have a chance to get our hands on a mid-sized Spirit Stone Mine. Why don't we do something big first?" Chapter 10-12. Hearing Waves Island and Jolting Hibernation Island were originally connected by a teleportation formation. However, when Mara besieged Hearing Waves Island, he used the power of space to temporarily isolate the 2 teleportation formations. This was also a common method used by the 2 sides when they fought. First, they had to cut off the other side's reinforcements and escape routes. After Hearing Waves Island was breached, the teleportation formation was immediately destroyed, so Lu Ping had no choice but to reconnect the 2 teleportation formations. This time, Lu Ping's teleportation formation was clearly much better than the previous one. Previously, it was only a small teleportation formation, similar to the teleportation formation at the bottom of the sea outside Huanyu Island. It could only teleport 1 person at a time. This time, the number of people that could be teleported each time was increased. This way, even if Hearing Waves Island was in danger again, it would not be easy to isolate the teleportation formation again. Rumble. Under Taoist Xian Peng's control, the teleportation formation connected to Hearing Waves Island was finally opened. However, the moment the teleportation formation was opened, the entire teleportation formation plate was already suffused with the light of teleportation. Everyone was puzzled. Who was so impatient? Could it be that something happened on Hearing Waves Island again? After the light flashed, a little girl in her teens appeared in the teleportation formation. Ignoring the strange gazes of the surrounding cultivators, she opened her mouth and shouted, "Brother Xian, where are you?" The surrounding Jinling disciples looked at each other. Lu Ping held his forehead with one hand and thought, "Ji Xian, you scourge, even I can't save you now." Tiankong Laozi looked into the distance and narrowed his eyes slightly. He said, "Mixed human and demonic, fox bloodline. Ji Xian is so bold and has such high taste. Is he going to repeat Yin Xuanchu's mistakes again?" Lu Ping hurriedly said, "Grandmaster, please calm down. Perhaps he's just a child who doesn't know any better and can't be taken seriously." At the edge of the teleportation formation in the distance, Ji Xian practically leaped and ran. He arrived before Du Jiuwei in a flash and said with a sullen face, "Little ancestor, why did you come here? Who told you to come?" Du Jiuwei scoffed. "I was worried about you." The surrounding Jinling cultivators could not help but laugh. As Ji Xian comforted the little ancestor, he repeatedly bowed to his fellow disciples and said, "Didn't senior brother Tianping go to Soundwave Island? Doesn't that mean I'm fine?" Xianpeng, that was Xianheng, and the others laughed as they turned to leave. Then, they heard Du Joey's voice coming from behind them again. How can you be at ease when he didn't see you? Aren't wives always so concerned about their husbands? Ha ha hee hee. All sorts of strange laughter rang out. Even Ji Xianxian, who had always been thick-skinned, couldn't help but turn red at this moment. Let's go, let's go. I'll bring you back first. We can use the teleportation formation to leave. He knew Du Joey's identity, and didn't dare to cause any trouble here. However, he heard Du Joey shake her head and say, No, no, I want to play here. This place is even bigger and more beautiful than Soundwave Island. Humph! Tian Kong Laozu's cold snort exploded in their ears. Not only Du Joey, even Ji Xianxian was shocked. When Du Joey looked around in confusion, Ji Xuanxuan's face turned green. He dragged the little ancestor to the teleportation formation. After a flash of white light, the two of them were already heading towards Soundwave Island. Lu Ping saw Tian Kong Laozu's ugly expression and cautiously said, It's just a child playing around. Martial granduncle doesn't have to mind. Tian Kong Laozu glanced at Lu Ping and said, Old man isn't blind yet. Why are there all sorts of people on that island of yours? You even have a bunch of demonic pets under your command. Aren't you afraid that one day someone will come looking for trouble? Lu Ping saw that the flames of war had implicated him and hurriedly smiled awkwardly without saying a word. Tian Kong Laozu didn't pursue the matter further. Instead, he asked, You just said there's a medium-sized spirit stone vein? The East Sea Mara's large-scale march north had not only exceeded the expectations of the large and small sects of the East Sea, but even a colossus like the Northern Alliance had suffered heavy losses. At this time, almost all the sects of the East Sea had begun to gather their forces in Phantom City, preparing to resist the upcoming Mara army. After Mara passed through, the original large and small forces were either wiped out or driven away. Under the situation where the Northern Alliance was unable to recover, there was a huge gap in power. Originally, under the pressure of Mara's calamity, the major sects didn't have the heart to care about such a gap. However, the North Sea's cultivation world was an exception. Perhaps it was an extra favor from God for the North Sea's impoverished cultivation world. This time, the North Sea's calamity of Mara's calamity had been heavily damaged by the combined forces of the human and demon clans, alleviating the situation of the entire North Sea's cultivation world. After that, although Mara made a comeback, the momentum was no longer the same as before. If it had been any other sect, it would have been fine, as there was simply no spare manpower to send to the East Sea. However, this was not the case for Jinling. Including Xianglu Laozu, Jinling had 16 Dharma adepts on the surface. Just in terms of numbers, they were already no weaker than an ordinary large sect. Furthermore, all the Dharma adepts of Jinling knew that on Huangli Island, Lu Ping had also hidden a famous killer, Lei Laolu, who had just entered the Dharma stage. Before this person had entered the Dharma stage, he was already no weaker than the direct disciples of the major sections. No one knew how strong he was now, but people like Tian Shu and Tianxin Laozu were definitely no match for him. With so many Dharma adepts, even though almost all of them had their own duties, if Jinling squeezed for a while, perhaps 1 or 2 Dharma adepts could be freed up to help out. Hearing that Lu Ping wanted to plot against the mid-sized spirit stone mine on the nameless island, although Tiankong Laozu did not agree on the spot, Lu Ping could still see that the old man was already tempted. The older generation of North Sea adepts had experienced the hardships of lacking spirit stones and spirit veins during their training. Almost no one could resist the temptation of a spirit stone mine. However, Lu Ping also told Tiankong Laozu about the fact that there was a Jade Shura guarding the spirit stone mine. If there was a Jade Shura, then there would definitely be a Blood Mara among her subordinates. It was just that the number of Mara's subordinates had yet to be investigated. Lu Ping would definitely not be able to do this alone. Even with the help of Tiankong Laozu and his mountain-splitting axe, he might not be able to do it. However, what would happen next was not something that Lu Ping should worry about. Tiankong Laozu would naturally communicate with the sect and plan everything. However, it would not take too long. After all, although Phantom City had set up layers of traps in the fallen Mystery Land to weaken the power of Mara's army, and Jingshi Island was not on the route of Mara's army, it would not take too long. If Mara's army really did arrive at Phantom City, then Tiankong Laozu would also have to rush over to defend it. After all, Junling had a lot of benefits there. In a secret room on Jingshi Island, Tiankong Laozu was already busy planning the Spirit Stone mine. Therefore, most of the spirit veins on the island had been drawn into Lu Ping's secret room. The battle with the Fire Shura was the most exhausting battle that Lu Ping had ever had. The inner yuan in his body had not yet fully recovered. Taking advantage of this time, Lu Ping could seize the time to train. Lu Ping took out the Linglong wine cauldron. The essence of the fallen water Shura came out, and was quickly subdued by Lu Ping's inner yuan. He began to refine it. Ever since Lu Ping had advanced to the Dharma stage on Fei Ling Island, he had not put his heart and soul into training. Even so, in these few years, the Dragon Dharma power in Lu Ping's core space had grown by 2 or 3 feet, reaching a length of 7 or 8 feet. If other Dharma adepts knew about this, they would definitely say that it was impossible. In fact, even Lu Ping himself felt that it was a little unbelievable. However, when he saw the pure yang pearl that the Dragon Dharma power had been refining every day, and the pure yang essence that was hidden in the Dharma power's auspicious cloud, which had shrunk to half its original size, Lu Ping seemed to have found the reason. With the refinement of this essence, the inner yuan in Lu Ping's body did not completely recover. Even the Dragon Dharma power in his core space seemed to have grown by 2 inches. However, more of the essence was absorbed by the natal gentian formation that surrounded the Dragon Dharma power. Only a very small part of this essence was beneficial to Lu Ping's training. The rest was extremely helpful in improving the quality of treasures of the same element. On top of the 9th-ranked white jade lotus in his core space, there was a huge horn floating. This mysterious horn was something that Lu Ping had found in the deepest part of the West Wilderness Lake of the Sage Fallen. Lu Ping instinctively felt that this horn was very important. Although he had wanted Qinlian to refine it into a treasure that he could use, after Lu Ping had advanced to the Dharma power stage, the Dragon Dharma power had directly taken possession of this item. Every time the Dragon Dharma power got tired of playing with the pure yang pearl in his core space, it would land on the white jade lotus to rest. At this time, the Dragon Dharma power would often raise its head and spit out a mouthful of essence toward the horn that was floating above the white jade lotus. This essence seemed to be refining the horn, but it also seemed to be sculpting it. In short, after a few years, the originally thick horn had shrunk by 1/3. However, the surface of the horn had become more and more lustrous. There seemed to be mysterious runes flowing on the surface of the horn. Lu Ping had carefully observed these runes before and found that they were very similar to the runes carved on the pure yang pearl. 3 days later, Lu Ping walked out of the secret room in high spirits. Not far away, he saw Tiankong Laozu, Lu Tianling, and Liang Tiafeng discussing something in low voices. When they noticed that Lu Ping had come out, they all turned to look at him. A flash of surprise flashed across Lu Ping's face. He hurriedly went up to greet Laozu, then looked at Lu Tianling and said, "Teacher, why are you here?" Lu Tianling smiled and said, "Now that the Dharma power adepts of our sect have their own duties, other than Brother Tiafeng who has temporarily rushed back from the Central Plains, it seems that only I, the sect leader, have the time to come." Chapter 10:13. Yin Xianchu was disheveled as he flew in the air. However, no matter how he used his concealment technique, the Windajura behind him was always able to detect his tracks and quickly caught up to him. After this, he would go into seclusion. When he got the spirit-forging pill that senior brother Tianping refined, he would definitely advance to the peak of the core-forging realm, and condense a 9th-grade golden core. Yin Xianchu made up his mind as he fled. He had suffered enough because of his insufficient cultivation, but he never thought that he would always provoke an existence that far surpassed his cultivation. Seeing that he was about to be caught again, Yin Xianchu had no choice but to say, "All right, this time it's up to you." The wind azure obviously had the idea of capturing him alive. Seeing that he was unable to escape, it immediately went forward to grab Yin Xuanchu's shoulder. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a little person about a foot tall suddenly appeared on Yin Xuanchu's shoulder. He grinned at the wind azure and pulled his right hand behind him. A 5-inch wooden sword was immediately unsheathed and slashed at the wind azure's outstretched claw. There was a loud boom. Unexpectedly, the wind azure let out a strange cry and suddenly withdrew his hand, only to find that one of his hands had already been pierced. When he looked up, Yin Xianchu had already taken the opportunity to escape. Lu Ping was discussing the situation of the East Sea with Tian Kong and Tian Ling when a decree suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Tian Kong Laozi held the decree in his hand and couldn't help but frown. He said, "Mara's army came very aggressively. The various forces of Phantom City set up 7 lines of defense on the path that Mara's army must pass through, but in just a few days, 4 of them have been broken through. They suffered heavy losses, and 2 Dharma adepts could not escape at the last moment, and have already fallen." Lu Tianling's expression was also very ugly. "Is Phantom City urging Uncle Master to go and participate in the defense again?" Old Ancestor Heavenly Kong said. "That's right, the other party only gave us 3 days' time. Now, the cultivators of all the big sects in South Sea have already arrived one after another. If we are late instead, we will be criticized by others instead. Furthermore, when Illusionary Spirit City renegotiated the distribution of the sects previously, our sect's sudden rise had offended numerous sections. When the time comes, it's hard to guarantee that these sects won't hit us while we're down and settle the score later." Just as Old Ancestor Tian Kang's voice landed, a sound transmission spell sword also passed through the island's protective formation. Lu Ping's divine will stirred and he stretched his hand out towards the spell sword. The spell sword then landed in his hand. Although there were several Dharma adepts on Hearing Wave Island now, as a precaution, they had also activated an illusory array like Hearing Wave Island. It was not easy for adepts below the Dharma stage to discover Jolting Hibernating Island on the sea unless they had special secret techniques. After Lu Ping finished reading, he handed the sound-transmitting sword to Lu Tianling and said, "Things are not good. Xianchu sent news that the Nameless Island not only has a Jade Shura guarding it, but there are also 4 Blood Mara subordinates. One is a Wind Shura, one is an Ice Shura, one is a Water Shura, and one is a Blood Demon. In addition, there are also dozens of big Mara, and there are many small Mara." On the side, Tian Kong Laozi snorted coldly and said, "What, that little bastard Xianchu is not willing to send the news himself? Must he use a sound-transmitting sword?" Lu Ping laughed bitterly to himself and said, "Wouldn't it be faster to send the news this way?" Tian Kong Laozi snorted coldly and stopped talking. Lu Tianling said, "This is a bit tricky. With Uncle Tian Kang's mountain-splitting axe, he can fight with the Jade Shura. As for the remaining 4 Blood Shura, Tian Ping should be able to defeat one of them one-on-one, but it's hard to say if he faces 2 of them. After all, when you killed the 2 Blood Shura on Hearing Waves Island, not only did Xianchu hold them back, but you also had the help of Chu Hyalon from the Green Sea Snakes. But with the strength of your Uncle Tian Feng and I, at most, we can fight to a draw with 1 Blood Shura each. Even so, the remaining dozens of big Shura will be a difficult task." Liang Tianfeng smiled bitterly and said, "Junior sister, you don't have to cover for me. With my ability, it's fine if I fight with 1 Shura for a while, but I will definitely lose after a long time." Lu Tianling said, "It's a pity that Chu Hyalon has already taken the only remaining cultivator of the AI family to the Carefree Pavilion. Otherwise, with his help, there might still be hope this time." Liang Tianfeng also said, "There are only 20 core forging cultivators on Jingzhi Island. Xian and Xianchu are good fighters, and there are only 30 core forging cultivators on Hearing Waves Island. Even if this is a sneak attack, I'm afraid the odds of winning are not high." Tian Kong Laozi thought for a while and said, "Even if there is a chance of winning, we can't make a move. Are you willing to lose 20 out of 30 core forging cultivators? We can't fight recklessly unless it's absolutely safe. Liang Tianfeng smiled bitterly. Everyone was silent. At this time, Lu Ping said in a low voice, Disciple is confident that he can hold off the three-headed blood Mara. Outside the nameless island, the cultivators on Junling and Hearing Waves Island had secretly gathered together. The few people in the lead were the second-generation cultivators, Spiritual Master Xian Su, Spiritual Master Xian Tong, Yao Yong, Du Feng, Xian Ling, Ji Xian Xian, Yin Xian Chu, Wei Xuanheng, and other late-stage core forging cultivators. Behind them were the cultivators from Jingzhi Island and Hearing Waves Island. But at this time, the cultivators all turned their attention to a giant tortoise floating on the surface of the sea. On top of the giant tortoise, there were a few monster cultivators that they couldn't see clearly. Aside from the giant tortoise, the chubby young man, and the young girl dressed in cyan and red clothes, Hu Yao Yong and the others recognized as Lu Qiner, De Gui, De Bao, and Lu Ping's mount, the others looked to be around 14 or 15 years old. None of them knew who they were. Especially the four with the highest strength. Not to mention Lu Qiner, the other three were at the 8th stage of core forging, but their surging auras made Ji Xian secretly think that if he were to encounter any one of them, he would most likely lose. In the sky above the nameless island, Tian Kong Laozu and the others were floating in the air. On the island, Mara seemed to have sensed something and curled up in the spirit vein. Old ancestor Tian Kong opened his mouth and wanted to dissuade Lu Ping again, but after a second thought, he realized that even he himself couldn't see through Lu Ping's strength. Thus, he could only say, You have to think this through. If 3 blood demons join hands, even I will have to retreat if I see them. Even if I have an avatar to help me, I will still have to act within my means. Your safety is of utmost importance to our sect. Not to mention one mid-sized spirit stone mine, even if it's 2 or 3, we won't exchange it. Lu Ping was touched and said, Don't worry, martial uncle, I understand. Lu Tianling knew that his disciple always planned before he acted, and would never do something he wasn't sure of. Although he was surprised that his disciple had grown so much, he still said, In that case, we have a chance of winning this time. I have the Thunder Spirit Whip, so I'll deal with the remaining Blood Shura. This way, senior brother Tianfeng can free up his hands to kill the late-stage core forging Big Mara first, and then help me break the stalemate. Seeing Liang Tianfeng nod, Lu Tianling continued to make arrangements. This time, we're only going for the Spirit Stone Vein. If you can expel the Mara inside, don't kill it, so as to avoid unnecessary casualties. Tian Kong Laozu took out the mountain-splitting axe, and the aura that he restrained suddenly surged toward the nameless island under his feet. He let out a long roar, and an unparalleled power with a strong sense of provocation rolled toward the Jade Shura hiding in the Spirit Stone Vein. Roar! A roar that didn't want to be outdone sounded from underground, and the wind and clouds surged in the sky. A deep hole that seemed to have crossed an unknown space from underground reappeared in the sky, and a Jade Shura flew out of the door, rushing straight toward Tian Kong Laozu. The mountain-splitting battle-axe in old ancestor Tian Kang's hand cleaved out, and the huge power forced the Jade Shura to temporarily dodge this full-power strike. Old ancestor Tian Kong took the chance to circle around, and at the same time, he lured the Jade Shura far away from Nameless Island. Although the high-level Mara also had intelligence, it was still a lot lower than the humans and demons. After the Jade Shura was provoked by Laozu, the Mara in the Spirit Stone Vein on the Nameless Island was also alarmed. For Blood Mara rushed out of the ground at the same time, and the black clouds around the Blood Demon rolled, and a sharp roar spread out in all directions. Not good, stop it! Lu Tianling shouted, and at the same time, he swung a whip in the air, and a few bolts of lightning struck toward the black clouds. Without waiting for Lu Tianling's reminder, Lu Ping also had a treasure in his hand, and he flew into the sky. Lu Tianling and Liang Tianfeng knew that Lu Ping had a 7-treasure thunder calabash, but this was the first time they had seen it. The mouth of the thunder calabash flashed, and a thick bolt of lightning fell. It split into 4 in the air, and 4 blood Mara were taken. At the same time, a golden rock flew out of Lu Ping's body, and clouds gathered after the rock flew past, forming a giant sail that covered the Jinling and Soundwave Island cultivators behind Lu Ping and the others. The blood demon's soul-devouring magic was blocked by the golden rock circling above the clouds. Yin Xianchu, Ji Xianxian, and the others under the clouds only felt a sting in their ears, and then they were unaffected. The lower-level cultivators behind them only felt dizzy, and they only needed to use their divine will to wake up. Although at the level of the blood demon, normal lightning magic didn't have much of an effect on it, it was first attacked by Lu Tianling's lightning whip, and then the 7 treasure thunder calabash used another lightning magic. The 2 lightning magic were used in a hurry, but the people who used it were Dharma adepts. The blood demon didn't dare to take it head-on, and could only let out a strange cry, and a cloud of black fog quickly retreated. At the same time, Lu Ping's divine will rushed toward the blood demon like a flood that had opened the floodgates, and it brought up a gust of wind in the sky. However, the strange thing was that every time the surging divine will splashed like a wave, a layer of invisible but real flame would burn above the divine will. Chapter 10:14. Lu Ping's divine sense seemed to have frightened the blood demon. It retreated twice as fast as before. At the same time, a pale hand reached out from the pitch-black smoke and waved the staff in front of the Xiao-mo. The black smoke around the Xiao-mo rolled back and formed a black smoke shield around the Xiao-mo's body. The Xiao-mo's eyes widened, and the black smoke around the Xiao-mo immediately turned into a black smoke shield. Lu Ping's expression froze. This was the first time he had seen the blood demon use the accompanying spiritual treasure in its hand to cast a spell. Whoosh! The huge wave of Lu Ping's will collided with the shield, stirring up a violent wind that raged wildly in the sky. The layer of flame attached to the will burned the black fog shield with a chi-chi sound. It kept melting, but it was never able to burn through the shield. Instead, more and more black fog kept repairing the melted shield. Just as the other 3 blood demon clones were dispelling the attack of Lu Ping's 7 treasures thunder calabash, Lu Ping pointed his finger at one of the blood demon. With 2 crisp clangs, the thin water-long stream sword was unsheathed and attacked the blood demon from both sides. The blood Azura was not afraid at all. It rolled up a gust of wind and clashed with the pair of flying swords. Amidst the chaotic clanging sounds, the magic weapons and spirit treasures of both sides had clashed hundreds of times in the blink of an eye. At this time, Lu Tianling's thunder spirit whip had already lashed at the other blood demon, and the 2 sides were soon in a mess. At this time, the remaining blood demon saw that Liang Tianfeng was the only Dharma adept left on the field, and it immediately rushed towards him with a grin. Unexpectedly, just as the blood demon was in midair, a little person about a foot in size suddenly jumped in front of him, stretched out his right arm, and shouted, "Unsheath!" A 5-inch short sword shot out from the back of the little person and flew towards the eyes of the blood demon. The blood demon was caught off guard and let out a strange cry. He suddenly rolled in midair and narrowly avoided Lu Xiaoping's attack. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and pushed forward, and a hidden force counterattacked. Lu Xiaoping screamed as he was hit by this hidden force and flew backward. However, his body was intact and did not suffer the slightest injury. Just as the few Dharma adepts fought with the blood Mara, hundreds of Mara emerged from the ground of the unnamed island. The dozens of Mara in the lead were the big Mara equivalent to the core forging stage. After this group of Mara rushed out, they rushed towards the Jinling adepts who were hiding on the sea in the distance. At this time, Liang Tianfeng, who was in midair, glanced at Lu Ping worriedly. He saw that although Lu Ping was at a disadvantage under the attacks of 3 blood Mara, there was no panic on his face. He was still calmly resisting the attacks of 3 Mara, and it seemed that he could still hold on for a while. Liang Tianfeng Laozu knew that he didn't have much time. Not to mention Lu Ping, even if Tiankang Laozu would not be defeated in a short period of time, he was afraid that something might happen if time dragged on. However, the situation on Lu Tianling's side was beyond his expectations. Lu Tianling, with the thunder spirit whip in her hand, was suppressing the blood demon. Junior sister Lu's strength had actually reached such a level. He didn't think much of it when he heard that she was sneak attacked by Jiangxi, but now it seemed that junior sister Lu's strength was already above junior sister Tianxin's. Liang Tianfeng looked at Lu Tianling with a complicated expression, and then swept up a whirlwind and rushed towards the great Shuras who were running at the front of the unnamed island. Liang Tianfeng's arrival clearly caused the demonic Luos that had rushed out to panic. However, the demonic Luos were indeed a race that did not fear death. Very soon, over a dozen of the strongest great Azuras flew out from the ranks and charged toward Liang Tianfeng. Without the obstruction of the strongest great Shuras, the pressure on the Jinling side was greatly reduced. Qi Lianying reached out and took out a treasure the size of a bell. The bell expanded to 2 feet in the air. It was a copper bell. Dang! The copper bell was struck by Qi Lianying's quintessential essence as a hammer, and the huge roar created layers of strange sound waves. In the ears of cultivators, it was only a little ear-piercing after using quintessential essence to block it, but in the ears of the charging Mara, it was like a stick to the head. Almost half of the dozens of great Shuras charging at the front were instantly shattered, and one by one, they began to fall from the sky. The ones that could still maintain their bodies were also scattered, and during the process of flying, they appeared to be in a state of stagger. As for the little Mara that followed behind the group of great Shuras, it was even more unbearable. Like dumplings, they splashed on the surface of the sea, creating one bubble after another. Xian Su, Xian Tong, Yin Xian Chu, Ji Xian Xian, Lu Qiner, Sam Ling, and the other late-stage core forging cultivators took the opportunity to attack from above and below the sea. In just a moment, 7 or 8 great Shuras had fallen. At this time, Qi Lianying struck the copper bell in his hand for the second time. This time, some of the weak little Mara's figures completely collapsed, and many of them completely fainted. However, the great demonic auras were prepared this time. Although they still roared loudly in pain when the bell rang, they did not cause large-scale chaos again. When Qi Lianying struck the imitation of the sea bell in his hand for the third time, a few great demonic cultivators suddenly used the soul-devouring howl, which was able to completely cancel out the strange bell sound, causing it to lose its effect. When Qi Lianying saw this, he flicked his sleeves and drew a beautiful trajectory in the air. The Taishan thorn, which shone with a cold light, was hidden in his sleeves and shot towards the group of great Mara. Under the joint attack of 2 blood Shuras and 1 blood demon, Lu Ping kept retreating to the distance of the nameless island. The cloud sail turned into a cloud and hid Lu Ping, making Lu Ping look like an immortal from afar. However, at this time, Lu Ping seemed to be in a sorry state. Although most of the attacks from the 3 blood Shuras had been neutralized by Lu Ping and blocked by the cloud sail, the remaining force was enough to make Lu Ping retreat again and again. Even the vigor shield around his body had been weakened to a thin layer. If not for the fact that Lu Ping's body had been strengthened by various elixirs, he might have suffered internal injuries by now. These 3 Mara were actually more anxious than Lu Ping at this time. They had already noticed the battle that was taking place on the nameless island behind them. Although Jinling's side did not have as many people as the Mara tribe, one of the Dharma adepts on Jinling's side had freed up his hands, and in an instant, he had restrained more than 10 of the strongest fighters on the Mara tribe's side. When the strange bell rang, the low-level members of the Mara tribe were almost slaughtered without any resistance. Even the big Mara who were less affected, despite having the advantage in numbers, were defeated by the few late core forging adepts on Jinling's side. However, every time one of the 3 Mara tried to escape from the battle, the human adept opposite them would always be able to display a powerful technique that they had never seen before. They had no choice but to fight back with all their might, and thus, were once again pulled back into the battle. Strange, it was just too strange. 3 blood demons and 3 accompanying spiritual treasures. If these forces were to join forces, even 2 or 3 mid-Dharma adepts would have a hard time dealing with them. However, they were actually being held back by an early Dharma adept in front of them. At this moment, these 3 blood Mara did not intend to push them away. Instead, they began to join forces with all their might, intending to get rid of this annoying human adept before them first. At this time, Lu Ping looked around and realized that they were actually dozens of miles away from the nameless island. The battle in the distance could no longer reach here. He muttered to himself, "Looks like it's about time." At this time, the three Mara suddenly exploded. The blood demon hidden in the black fog suddenly let out a low growl. As it waved its jade staff that extended out of the black fog, dozens of invisible sound blades that could only be detected by divine will slashed at Lu Ping from all directions. At the same time, the wind Shura also shook a wind bag in its hand. Dozens of wind blades strangely merged with the sound blades, causing Lu Ping's divine will to be unable to distinguish which were the sound blades and which were the wind blades. At this time, if an ordinary adept rashly used his divine will to block the attack, he might be ambushed by the wind blades. If he only focused on blocking the wind blades, then the sound blades would have an opportunity to strike. As the wind Shura was coordinating with the blood demon to attack, the body of the remaining ice Shura began melting rapidly. While Lu Ping was still in a state of shock, a massive ice palace had taken shape in midair. The massive palace enveloped Lu Ping and the three Mara. Everything within the palace was carved out of ice and snow. A chilling power condensed within the palace, and Lu Ping felt as though his breathing was about to freeze. Every move he made became stiff. As for the wind blades and sound blades, they became even more untraceable under the cover of ice and snow. This was originally an exquisite cooperation between the Mara. Although they did not know how many unknown tricks the person in front of them had up his sleeves, when the three Mara joined forces to besiege him, even someone as powerful as Lu Ping could not help but show a hint of solemnity on his face. A milky white halo suddenly flickered under Lu Ping's feet, and a huge 9th-grade white jade lotus slowly bloomed in the sky. As the lotus bloomed, the boundless auspicious clouds spread out in all directions at the same time. When the white jade lotus bloomed under Lu Ping's feet, the boundless sea of flowers began to appear in midair due to the spirit energy that gathered. Countless spirit energy petals began to fall from the sky. Although dozens of powerful sound blades and wind blades eventually shattered the outermost layer of auspicious clouds, they were knocked down by the countless falling petals of the white jade lotus. The ice Shura was holding an ice ball that shone with a chilling light in its hand. It slowly condensed from the center of the ice palace. The chilling ice palace became even colder, as though the boundless sea of spirit energy flowers was about to wither in the bitter cold. However, 4 cold stars suddenly shot out from Lu Ping's body, almost sealing off the space where the ice Shura could dodge. The ice Shura let out a sound that sounded like a sneer and disappeared from the ice palace. When it reappeared, it was already on the other side of the ice palace. In this ice palace, it was the master. However, at that moment, it saw 4 more cold stars shooting out from Lu Ping's body. This time, it was not aimed at it, but at the wind Shura. This time, it saw clearly that the 4 cold stars were actually 4 sparkling and translucent pearls. However, at that moment, another 4 cold stars shot out from Lu Ping's body toward the blood devil. This time, not only the ice Shura, but the wind Shura and the blood devil also felt that something was wrong. Chapter 10-15. The 3 Mara had already noticed that something was wrong. Although Lu Ping had initially used the 12 crystal clear pearls as a means of attack, after the 3 Mara dodged them, the 12 pearls strangely floated around them, forming a vague circle that surrounded the 3 Mara. The 3 Mara turned around and was about to escape the circle formed by the 12 gentian pearls when they heard Lu Ping say coldly, "Since you've come in, how can you leave so easily?" The white jade lotus under Lu Ping's feet shone brightly, and countless runes flowed on each petal, gradually forming a huge formation. This formation resonated with the 12 gentian pearls around it, forming a huge space in the ice hall that was covered in blue light, imprisoning the 3 Mara within the gentian. The ice ball, a companion spiritual treasure, floated in the hands of the ice Shura, collided with the layer of blue light, and a layer of crystal white frost spread along the armguard formed by the gentian formation with the ice ball as the center. But then the 12 gentian pearls suddenly shone brightly, and countless blue light pressed against the spreading frost. Bang! The ice ball bounced back, and the ice Shura took a few steps back with the ice ball in his hands before he could stabilize himself. The Wind Shura and the Blood Demon saw that the situation was not good. The Wind Shura opened the wind bag in his hand, and a green wind blade slashed out from the wind belt. At the same time, the Blood Demon also stirred the companion's spiritual treasure in his hand, and a cloud of black fog shot out from the treasure toward the formation shield of the Gentian formation. The two attacks landed on the Gentian formation at the same time, and Lu Ping's body seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. A trace of dark blue appeared on his face, and then he disappeared. But at this moment, the white jade lotus under Lu Ping's feet suddenly shot out dozens of bluish-purple crystal lines, connecting with the 12 gentian pearls that were emitting colorful light. Countless rune diagrams appeared on the lotus, and the countless cracks on the formation shield that were formed by the two Maras' combined attacks slowly began to dissipate. The sturdiness of the gentian formation was obviously beyond the expectations of the three Mara. The three Mara had a tacit understanding with each other, and although they were surprised to see the situation, they immediately joined forces to attack again. They could see that the joint attack of two Mara had already reached Lu Ping's limit. As long as the three Mara could join forces to break the formation, then Lu Ping would inevitably fall into a difficult situation. But how could Lu Ping let them succeed so easily? The Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash had already been suspended in the sky above the Gentian formation when the two Mara joined forces to attack. A thick ray of colorful lightning fell from the sky, but this time it did not attack the three people separately, but fell directly on the Blood Demon. The Blood Demon, who was hiding in the black fog, let out a strange howl. Layers of black fog surged from his body and formed several black shields. At the same time, the Blood Demon's figure changed. Even though the 7-gem Thunder Gourd would not cause too much damage to the Blood Demon with his current cultivation and strength, the Blood Demon's instinctive fear of thunder and lightning made him want to escape from the 7-gem Thunder Gourd's pursuit. However, Lu Ping's tide-like divine thoughts, after being amplified by the cloud sail, burned in the space formed by the Gentian formation. The invisible soul fire surrounded the Blood Demon from all directions, forcing it to fight the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash head-on. When the Blood Demon was entangled by Lu Ping again, the thin stream sword also trembled with the Ice Shura. At the same time, Lu Xiaoping appeared again to attack the Wind Shura, but the Wind Shura easily dodged it. However, the tacit cooperation between the three Mara was also easily broken by Lu Ping. In addition, Lu Ping's Aqua Sword could help Lu Xiaoping to maintain the situation. Although Lu Ping was still at a disadvantage, he no longer had the power to obstruct the completion of the Gentian formation. As the 12 Gentian pearls and the rank 9 white jade lotus were connected one by one with crystal wires that only Lu Ping could see, the 12 Gentian pearls began to connect with each other, gradually forming a giant net in the ice palace. The ice ball in the Ice Shura's hand suddenly trembled. The Ice Shura looked up and saw the huge ice palace collapsing. The natal Gentian formation had been activated and broke the ice palace that the Ice Shura had set up. A huge formation covered in blue crystal walls was activated with a bang. No one's divine senses and divine thoughts could detect the situation inside the formation. The three Mara that had also reached out of the formation had also lost contact with the Mara outside. Spirit gathering! A low voice came out of Lu Ping's mouth slowly. A huge but invisible vortex formed in the middle of the formation, gradually spreading to the surrounding void. The spiritual energy of the world within a radius of more than 100 miles began to gather in the Origin Time Grand Formation. There were violent winds and huge waves, and even the clouds in the sky were surging, stirring up a huge astronomical phenomenon. The commotion quickly alerted the two sides that were fighting on the nameless island. Looking at the giant blue formation and the phenomenon it caused, the Jade Shura immediately felt that something was wrong. She roared angrily and wanted to get rid of the entanglement in front of her and go to the formation. Although Tiankong Laozu was surprised that Lu Ping had never used this skill before, Lu Ping had already given him enough surprises to numb him. Seeing that the Jade Shura was attacking him fiercely, but also looking in the direction of the battle between Lu Ping and the three Mara, Tiancong Laozu knew what she was thinking. He used the mountain-splitting axe in his hand to fight the strong enemy in front of him, and buy time for Lu Ping. At this moment, Lu Tianling had already gained the upper hand. With the Thunder Spirit Whip in hand and the complete Lehigh Wave listening chant, Lu Tianling's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. This didn't just include her cultivation. Although the Shura in front of him also had a water attribute innate divine ability, Lu Tianling also had her own innate great divine ability. After a fierce battle, Lu Tianling slowly gained the upper hand because of her rich Xingyuan. Liang Tianfeng was also anxious. Although he was surrounded by more than 10 big Mara, and these Mara's attacks were orderly and coordinated, which caused a lot of trouble for Liang Tianfeng, he used the great ability he had just learned with the help of Celestial Elephant Laozu. Liang Tianfeng turned into a storm. Although this great ability was only a support skill, it was enough for Liang Tianfeng to wreak havoc in the encirclement of the Mara. He had already killed 5 big Mara that were equivalent to the late stage of the core forging realm. He had to solve the trouble under him as soon as possible before he could free up his hands to help Lu Tianling. Once he was able to break the stalemate, Xinling's victory was already set in stone. What made Liang Tianfeng anxious was the large-scale battle between Xinling's disciples and Mara. Although Yin Xianchu, Ji Xianxian, Yao Yong, Du Feng, the Blue Phoenix Demon, and the 3 young men and women who were at the late stage of the core forging realm were continuously killing big Mara, Mara's side still had the advantage in numbers. On Xinling's side, there were already casualties among the core forging realm cultivators. The surrounding Lingqi of heaven and earth stabilized the natal prime hour grand formation. At the same time, it also cut off the connection between the 3-headed demon Luo and the Lingqi of heaven and earth, causing the 3-headed demon Luo to panic. However, Lu Ping's great formation wasn't limited to this. A deep voice rang out in the formation again. "See coming!" The runes engraved on the white jade lotus danced in the air. The 12 gentian beads swam around in the space of the formation, and a colorful yellow light flickered almost in the entire space. The 3 Mara had already discovered that something was wrong. They were rushing towards Lu Ping, who was standing in the center of the formation and floating above the white jade lotus. However, they suddenly found that their bodies were sinking and becoming sluggish. It was as if they were walking in the deep sea. Not only did they have to overcome the unparalleled pressure of the sea, but they also had to overcome the obstruction of the water. Their speed inevitably slowed down. Even the Wind Azura, who had always been known for its speed, had to spend several times more effort to stir up a gust of wind and rush towards Lu Ping. The Blood Demon propped up a huge black ball with the black fog around him, while the Ice Azura hung an ice ball over his head. The surrounding space seemed to be completely frozen. The Ice Azura directly used the ice escape technique, and it was unexpectedly able to compete with the power of sea coming from the Great Gentian Formation. Lu Ping snorted coldly. He changed the incantation gesture in his hand again. From the center of the white jade lotus under his feet, a dense blue spiritual energy spurted out like a firework, exploding in the space of the formation. God strike! The origin time beads that had been lingering at the edge of the formation suddenly disappeared. The 3-headed demon Luo was greatly alarmed. Wind Azura tried his best to turn into a fierce gust of wind as he dodged in the surroundings. Every time, he would miss a streak of multicolored light by a hair's breadth. However, his divine sense was unable to clearly capture the trajectory of the origin time beads. The wind blades that whistled out from the wind belt in his hand were unable to block the attacks of the origin time beads. However, in the space of the formation, the Wind Azura used up a lot of energy to cast its innate magical power. Every time the Wind Azura stopped for a short time, Lu Ping could already see that the Wind Azura was exhausted. Even its body began to lose its rich green color and become a little transparent. The Ice Azura, on the other hand, set up a thick layer of black ice around its body to fight against the Gentian Pearl. Loud rumbling sounds constantly sounded in the formation, and the black ice that was broken by the gentian pearl was immediately repaired by the ice azura. At this time, the blood demons seemed to be a lot more relaxed. Surrounded by the black fog, the gentian pearl shuttled back and forth several times, but it never hit the blood demon's body. It seemed that the blood demon was not in the black fog, but it also seemed that the blood demon's body had become illusory. The gentian pearl shuttled back and forth in the body of the blood demon, but it could not hurt the body. However, right at this moment, a rainbow-colored lightning struck down once again. The blood demon finally reacted. The thick black fog surged upwards, and a rainbow-colored light took advantage of this opportunity to strike down. With a pu sound, it finally hit the Rio body, and the blood demon's pained roar finally came from within the black fog. Seeing this, Lu Ping was slightly happy. Then, he clenched his hands and opened them. 2 balls of rich spiritual energy flashed in his hands. Lu Ping pressed his palms down slightly and shouted, "Qin Yu!" Chapter 1016. Suppressing Mountain. As Lu Ping shouted, the white jade lotus shrouded in a halo of white light shone even brighter, filling the entire space in the array formation with its pure white light. If the 3 Mara's movements were restricted by the gentian formation's external power suppression, this time, the pure white light from the gentian formation instantly invaded the Mara's body, causing the 3 Maras to become motionless from the inside out. However, this did not mean that the 3 Mara had given up resisting. Lu Ping hovered above the white jade lotus. The spiritual ether pillars that surged out of his palms became more and more vigorous. The entire formation space could hear the ebb and flow of the tides. Crack! The 7 treasures thunder calabash was the fastest. As soon as the 3 Mara were completely restrained by Lu Ping, it immediately began to concentrate all of its power to attack the blood demon's protective black mist. Thunder magic had a special effect on the Mara, and this effect was even worse on the Shioma clan. The shrill cries of the Mara were hair-raising. As a blood demon, although the 7 treasures thunder calabash's thunder magic could severely injure it, it was not enough to kill it. Moreover, as the 3 Mara joined forces to resist, Lu Ping was becoming more and more powerless to completely suppress the 3 Mara in the formation. Bang! The ice Shura was the first to break free from Lu Ping's restraint. Just as the thin water-flowing sword was about to pierce its heart, it used the ice ball in its hand to hit the twin flying swords. Clang! The ice ball was, after all, a spiritual treasure. Under the ice Shura's angry attack, the thin water-flowing sword was immediately smashed askew. However, it was a little too late. Although the twin flying swords were not able to kill the ice Shura, they twisted one of the ice Shura's arms into a mist of ice essence. Ice Shura roared and pushed the ice ball with her remaining arm. The ice ball was pushed into the void and disappeared. Lu Ping had a bad feeling. The thin water sword split into 2 and flew back towards Lu Ping, but he saw that above the thin water sword, the ice ball came crashing down again. Lu Ping saw that the situation was not good. He casually plucked a cloud from the cloud around him and pushed it towards the thin water sword. However, it was too late. The ice ball smashed down and the thin water sword let out a mournful wail. The sword's body immediately froze. At this time, the magic cloud appeared and wrapped around the thin water sword. Then, before the ice ball hit for the second time, it disappeared from the formation space. When it reappeared, it was already in Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping reached out to hold the thin water sword. He immediately felt a chill from his palm directly into the core space. Lu Ping snorted coldly and tightened his grip on the sword. A blue light flashed in Lu Ping's palm and the frost on the sword quickly disintegrated. However, when Lu Ping scanned it with his divine telekinesis, he found that the thin water sword's spirituality was greatly damaged. Although it was not to the extent of lowering its grade, Lu Ping would need to put in a lot of effort to restore it to its previous level. Lu Ping looked up at the ice Shura that only had 1 arm left. His eyes flashed with murderous intent. He saw that the ice Shura was holding the ice ball with one hand and charging towards the blood demon that Lu Ping had beaten to the point where it could only defend itself. Although the other wind Shura had been completely imprisoned by Lu Ping and allowed Lu Zhaoping to take the opportunity to blind one of its eyes, it still managed to break free when the other thin water sword slashed at it. The wind bag in its hand blew out a gust of wind, blowing Lu Zhaoping far away in the air. The wind Shura also noticed the blood demon's predicament and leaped over to help. At this time, Lu Ping would not allow the three of them to join forces again. The formation space that had originally sealed off the spirit chi suddenly opened up. The spirit chi that had been condensed from the spirit gathering effect of the Genshin formation surged into the formation space like a tide, causing the spirit chi in the entire formation space to condense into liquid. Lu Ping raised his hand vertically, and the spiritual energy tide in the entire space began to fluctuate violently. At the same time, the 12 origin chin beads were like 12 bright moons hanging in the sky above the array space, flashing with dazzling 5-colored rays, causing the turbulence of the spiritual energy tide to become even more violent. Mara's spirit devourer and the 2 Shuras that were charging towards the blood demon were already drunk from the spirit chi that had suddenly reappeared. When Lu Ping used the blue waves technique with the help of the Genshin formation, the 3 Mara could no longer stand in the formation space. They swayed left and right, unable to display even half of their abilities. At the same time, Lu Ping seized the opportunity to unleash all his attacks on the blood demon. This was the 3rd time the 7 Treasures Thunder Gourd had cast the 7 Treasures Thunder Gourd. The black mist around Mo Luo's body was almost disintegrated, leaving only a thin layer behind. As for Lu Ping, he beat the blood demon while it was down. He extended his hand towards the sky, and a blue chain of light slashed down. His innate great divine ability, Sunflower Divine Lightning, under the amplification of the Genshin formation, was not weaker than the 7 Treasure Thunder Calabash's Rainbow Lightning. The blood demon roared, and the last thin layer of black mist around its body finally dissipated, revealing the blood demon's pale white body with a trace of fear. At this time, a dark green flame suddenly appeared in front of the blood demon. The Jade Soul Fire finally materialized in front of the blood demon. The blood demon screamed and wanted to retreat. However, the Jade Soul Fire was much faster than it. The blood demon raised the jade staff in its hand, and an invisible soul remembrance shield appeared in front of the blood demon's retreating figure. However, the Jade Soul Fire instantly burned a hole in the shield, and the Jade Soul Fire once again pounced towards the blood demon. The blood demon originally wanted to dodge, but unexpectedly, one of the 12 gentian pearls in the sky above the formation suddenly fell. It streaked through the air as a rainbow light belt, and then smashed into the back of the blood demon's head. This time, even Lu Ping, who was in the center of the formation, furrowed his brows. It seemed that the gentian formation had undergone a change that even he did not expect. The blood demon staggered. When it stabilized its body again, it suddenly discovered that one of its heels was burning with a dark green flame. The blood demon turned pale with fright. It used several divine abilities in an attempt to extinguish the flame on its feet. However, the flame was strangely tight. It was like a maggot in a tarsal bone, firmly clinging to the blood demon's body. It was never extinguished. Instead, because of the blood demon's various divine abilities, the flame burned even more intensely. The Jade Soul Fire was a heaven and earth spirit fire. It was a heaven and earth spirit fire that used divine sense as its fuel. Not only was it one of the few things in the cultivation world that could use divine sense to kill, but it was also a heaven and earth treasure that could restrain devil cultivators. The Jade Soul Fire seemed to be burning on the blood demon's body, but the blood demon's body did not suffer any damage. However, the blood demon let out a miserable howl, as if it was enduring extreme pain. The Ice Azura and Wind Azura, who had managed to survive Lu Ping's blue waves technique with great difficulty, arrived in front of the blood demon. However, they did not dare to approach the blood demon when they saw the blood demon's miserable state. They could only watch as the blood demon in front of them continuously thrashed in the air, but it was unable to extinguish the flame that used its divine sense to burn. Both of their faces were filled with fear. The blood demon's aura became weaker and weaker. Even the jade staff in its hand seemed to have a strong connection with its divine sense and began to slowly melt under the burning of the jade soul fire. Lu Ping had wanted to keep this spiritual treasure, but when he was controlling the jade soul fire, he could clearly sense that this jade staff contained a strange power. When the blood demon died, this power in the jade staff had already been triggered. However, because the jade soul fire was burning, this strange power had an outlet, so it did not self-destruct. Once Lu Ping withdrew the jade soul fire, this jade staff would definitely explode along with the blood demon's death. Just when the blood demon no longer had the strength to struggle, the Ice Azura and Wind Azura, who were terrified by the blood demon's tragic death, had already started to attack the Gentian formation in a frenzy. They wanted to break the formation and retreat. At the same time, on the other side of the nameless island, Lu Tianling was bleeding from the corner of his mouth. However, he tightly gripped the lightning spirit whip in his hand, and the other end of the whip was tightly wrapped around the neck of the Water Azura. The Water Azura struggled fiercely, but was unable to break free from Lu Tianling's grasp. Lian Tianfeng let out a long roar, and his natal magic treasure turned into a 3-foot-long wind wheel. He slashed at Water Azura with all his might. Water Azura finally let out a scream of fear before it died. The companion spirit treasure in its hand tried its best to block the attack, but Lu Tianling, who was behind it, sealed its innate magical power with the Thunder Whip, so it couldn't unleash any of its power. Cha! The Water Azura was cut in half by the wind wheel. Lu Tianling let go of the Thunder Spirit Whip and quickly retreated. At the same time, he said to Liang Tianfeng, "Run!" Liang Tianfeng also realized something at this time. His body flashed and appeared above the battle between the Jinling cultivator and Mara. Amidst the loud bang, the huge impact caused by the spiritual treasure's fall reached the Jinling cultivator, but it was blocked by Liang Tianfeng with all his might. At this time, Lu Tianling's Thunder Spirit Whip whistled through the air at the same time, immediately helping Liang Tianfeng resolve the damage caused by the spiritual treasure's explosion. At this moment, the formation dozens of miles away suddenly collapsed with a rumble. Wind Azura, who had been blinded in one eye, flew out of the broken formation with one hand holding the wind bag spirit treasure. Ice Azura, who had lost both arms and the ice ball spirit treasure. Ice Azura, who had lost both arms and the ice ball spirit treasure, and flew toward the northern sea without looking back. In the distance, Jade Azura attacked several times with the spiritual treasure in her hand, forcing Tian Kong Laozu to retreat. She looked at Lu Ping, who was suspended in the air after the formation was broken, and turned around to fly toward the northern sea. This time, Tian Kong Laozu did not attack again. Dozens of miles away, Lu Ping looked at the gentian bead in his hand in surprise. The blue light in his eyes easily saw through the colorful light on the surface of the gentian bead. A green flame was jumping inside the gentian bead. Chapter 10:17. Just as the blood demon Psyche was burned to death by the jade phosphorus soul fire in the gentian formation, the gentian pearl that had fallen from the sky above the formation had somehow appeared in front of the jade phosphorus soul fire. As the controller of the formation, Lu Ping could clearly feel the state of this gentian pearl. It seemed like it wanted to merge with this jade phosphorus soul fire. How could this be? Lu Ping frowned, a little confused. This gentian pearl had already rushed into the jade phosphorus soul fire. For some reason, Lu Ping did not stop it immediately. Then, under Lu Ping's shocked and stunned gaze, the gentian pearl completely disappeared. Perhaps it did not disappear, but was melted by this jade phosphorus soul fire, or rather, merged with it. Therefore, when Lu Ping tried to operate the gentian formation, he did not notice the disappearance of this gentian pearl. The entire gentian formation was still operating smoothly, and the gentian pearl that did not disappear, in Lu Ping's perception through the formation, was actually this jade phosphorus soul fire in front of him. How could this be? At this moment, there was a loud bang, and Lu Ping was shocked. He saw that after the two Shuras tried to break the gentian formation repeatedly but to no avail, the eyes Shura saw that Lu Ping was actually operating the formation again. Thinking about the strange way that the blood demon had died, in his shock, he actually detonated his companion's spiritual treasure, the crystal clear but rather powerful ice ball. The exploding companion's spiritual treasure broke the gentian formation in one fell swoop while Lu Ping was distracted. The two Shuras fled, and the moment the ice ball exploded, Lu Ping subconsciously operated the formation to protect himself. Only then did he realize that the jade phosphorus soul fire had turned back into the gentian pearl for some reason. Seeing that Lu Tianling and Liang Tianfeng had joined forces to kill a water Shura, and the jade Shura that was fighting with Tiankong Laozu realized that the situation was not good, and quickly retreated, while the Jinling disciples had gained an overwhelming advantage in their battle with Mara. Only then did Lu Ping reach out and take the gentian pearl, which had turned back into a pearl, in his hand to carefully examine it. Lu Ping held the gentian pearl in his hand, and at this time, he felt that the pearl in his hand was no longer a gentian pearl, but a ball of flame, a ball of jade phosphorus soul fire. However, for some reason, this ball of jade phosphorus soul fire did not affect the activation of the gentian formation at all. Even after the jade phosphorus soul fire was integrated into the gentian pearl, Lu Ping found that the gentian formation seemed to have another magical effect, and even its power began to increase significantly. The pearl in Lu Ping's hand was constantly changing between the form of the jade phosphorus soul fire and the gentian pearl, but there was no obstacle. Lu Ping seemed to understand something, but he did not fully understand it. However, he could feel that this did not bring him any harm, and on the contrary, it might bring him a lot of benefits. At this time, Lu Tianling had already called him over from afar. Lu Ping flipped his hand, and the gentian pearl disappeared into his palm. Lu Ping took a step forward, and in an instant, he was already above the nameless island. After gathering a few clouds in the sky, they quickly formed the cumulonimbus cloud. When the raindrops fell, they turned into flying blades. Those Mara that had not yet fallen or were hiding, under the art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain, none of them could escape with their lives. Tiankong Laozu and Liang Tianfeng had already brought spiritual master Xianwei, who had already arrived before, but was nowhere to be seen during the battle just now. They entered the underground spirit stone vein of the nameless island to check, and began to arrange attraction formation. Only Lu Tianling and Lu Ping were left in the sky on guard. Seeing Lu Ping coming over, Lu Tianling frowned and said to Lu Ping, "Xianchu seems to have a deep prejudice against the sect. As soon as the battle ended, he left with a group of cultivators on your Sound Waves Island." Lu Ping couldn't help but be startled when he saw a few rays of light on the sea in the distance. The expression on his face kept changing. Fortunately, Lu Tianling and Laozu's attention was not on him, so they didn't notice the fluctuations in Lu Ping's expression. Even if Yin Xianchu didn't want to meet the high-level cultivators of the sect, he still had to greet his friends like Yao Yong, Du Feng, and Xianling. Leaving in such a hurry was probably not only because of Yin Xianchu. Could it be that Qi Lianying decided to leave on her own? At this time, the cultivators of Jinling also began to gradually leave. After Mara was expelled and killed, there was nothing left for them to do. In order to avoid being discovered, they began to secretly evacuate to Jingzhi Island. With a rumble, the entire nameless island shook, and 3 rays of light flew out from the island. Lu Tianling asked Tiankong Laozu, "Martial uncle, are you ready?" Old Ancestor Heavenly Peace pointed at spiritual master Xianwei, who was behind him, and said, "Ask this brat. Heavenly Wind and I are just grasping blindly inside. We are all listening to this brat's commands." Lu Ping thought about Taoist master Xuanwei's clueless method of setting up the formation and found it a bit funny. However, ever since Taoist master Xianwei obtained the inheritance of the Crystal Palace's mind-seeking master, his position in the sect had been rising steadily. Although his identity couldn't be exposed in the sect, everyone in Jinling, Laozu, took good care of him. Taoist Master Xianwei said confidently, "Laozu, don't worry. disciples' formation is different from others. Not only does it make the movement of the spirit vein extremely quiet during the process of moving, it also reduces the risk of being discovered by others through the movement of the spirit vein. It also reduces the consumption of cultivators by a lot, and the process of moving will also speed up a lot. Lu Tianling nodded and said, "If that's the case, then let's not delay any further. Let's move it into the Dao Grotto Heaven now, in case anything unexpected happens." Lu Tianling took out a piece of jade that had been hollowed out. It looked like an ordinary piece of jade had a peerless precious treasure hidden within it. Then, the peerless precious treasure was taken out from the jade, and the ordinary jade was thrown away like a shoe. Lu Ping looked at the jade and couldn't help but be startled. He said, "Teacher brought the Jade Grotto Heaven out from Tianling Mountain?" This seemingly tattered jade stone was Jinling Sek's second and third Grotto Heaven mystic treasures. Back then, Lu Ping had found the 5-elemental cloud cloak, a spirit-nurturing mystic treasure passed down in the listening wave manner. However, after Lu Ping advanced to the manifestation stage, his cultivation, divine ability, and strength all increased greatly, and this magic treasure was rarely used by Lu Ping in fights. Now, Jinling's second Grotto Heaven was the abundant void mirror in the hands of Jiang Tianlin Laozu. This Grotto Heaven magic treasure was integrated with 8 layers of Grotto Heaven restrictions, and it was second only to the true Spirit Grotto Heaven in Jinling's Grotto Heaven. However, the abundant void mirror was not only a Grotto Heaven magic treasure, but also an extremely powerful offensive treasure. Otherwise, it would not have been carried by Jiang Tianlin Laozu all the time. Otherwise, the Jade Grotto Heaven would not have continued to hold the position of the second inheritance Grotto Heaven in Jinling because it contained a large number of inheritances from generations of cultivators of Jinling. As for the true Spirit Grotto Heaven in Jinling's first inheritance Grotto Heaven, its quality was actually similar to the abundant void mirror in that it was integrated with 8 layers of Grotto Heaven restrictions. However, Jinling's Grotto Heaven contained the remains of Dharma cultivators of Jinling's past generations, as well as their inheritances. Moreover, it was upgraded by Taishan Laozu, the only person in Jinling who had become a true spirit. Only then did it have 8 layers of Grotto Heaven restrictions, which allowed it to firmly occupy the position of the first inheritance Grotto Heaven in Jinling. Lu Tianling, Tian Kong Laozu, and Liang Tianfeng were about to work together to start moving this medium-sized spirit stone mine, but unexpectedly, Lu Ping's expression suddenly changed, and he said, "Wait!" Tian Kong Laozu and the others saw Lu Ping's serious expression, and their hearts suddenly sank. Lu Tianling knew that Lu Ping's will was far stronger than that of ordinary people, so he asked, "Did you find something?" Lu Ping looked into the far north of the sea and said in a low voice, "Just now, the Jade Shura did not go far away, but lingered near this sea. I'm afraid that the other party's plan is to suddenly attack when we use our magic to move the spirit stone mine, and can't be distracted. Even if it can't seriously injure 1 or 2 of us, it will at least interrupt the process of moving." Tian Kong Laozu did not notice anything before, but after Lu Ping's reminder, he seemed to feel that the Jade Shura's presence was not far away. When Spiritual Master Xianwei heard that there was a Jade Shura lying in ambush, his face suddenly turned pale, but he still remembered his duty, and he said with a trembling voice, "If we plan to move during the process of moving, the spirit stone mine will definitely be heavily damaged. Even if we try to repair it, the quality of the spirit stone mine will drop, and it might even become a small spirit stone mine." Lu Ping smiled at Spiritual Master Xianwei and said, "Don't worry, I was just reminding everyone to be careful. Since we have already discovered its presence, as long as one of us can restrain it, it will naturally not appear unless we are confident of success." As expected, Lu Ping did not participate in the movement of the spirit stone mine from beginning to end. Instead, he sneaked a few miles towards the north of the sea, and then he floated in the air and began to meditate. His divine will was still sensing the presence of the Jade Shura from afar. The 3 Dharma adepts landed on the nameless island, and Lu Tianling opened the jade cave. The hole opened by the old jade stone suddenly expanded to a few feet high, and there was a rumbling sound coming from the bottom of the nameless island. Even the sea around the island began to shake, and waves kept rising, piling up one after another. Very soon, there was a huge wave that was a few feet high, and it was pushed far away from the sea. And Lu Ping's divine will was locked on the Jade Shura's faint presence from afar. Even though Lu Ping was only an early Dharma adept, Lu Ping had single-handedly fought against 3 Mara, killed a blood demon, and severely injured 2 blood Shuras, and had caused the distant Jade Shura to tremble with fear. After a while, perhaps seeing that Lu Ping's defense was tight, and that there was no chance for it to attack, the Jade Shura's presence finally disappeared. At this time, the movement of the Spirit Stone mine on the nameless island was also nearing its end. Chapter 10:18. With the successful migration of the Spirit Stone vein, the mine tunnel under the nameless island suddenly collapsed, and nearly half of the nameless island was submerged by the sea. Lu Tianling didn't stay on Jingzhi Island for long. After learning about the situation in the East China Sea, she left. During this period, Lu Ping had several opportunities to mention Shi Lianing to her, but in the end, Lu Ping still didn't know where to start. In the end, he just watched Lu Tianling leave. After all, he only suspected it. If he told his teacher about it, and it turned out to be false, wouldn't that be a big joke? Lu Ping found a plausible reason for himself, and finally felt at ease. So he returned to Soundwave Island and began to restore the vitality he had lost in the battle. Because Lu Ping had to go with Tiancong Laozu to Fantasy City in 3 days, Lu Ping could only stay on Soundwave Island for 2 days. After giving a bit of the essence that Ling Long had absorbed from the companion spirit treasure of the Eye Sejura to Lu Linger, Lu Ping began to restore the lost qi in his body while nurturing and repairing the thin water sword that had been damaged in the battle. But in addition to this, Lu Ping also put some of his energy on the 2 gentian beads in the core space. These 2 gentian beads had some unexpected elements for Lu Ping. One of them was naturally integrated with the Jade Soul Fire, and after Lu Ping tried it, he found that the Jade Soul Fire could change between the 2 forms of the gentian bead and the flame at any time. And the other gentian bead seemed to have a river in it. This river meandered, very much like the Yulon River that Lu Ping used to flow from Drifting Island to the sea. When Lu Ping returned to the Central Plains from the Western Wasteland, he drifted along the Yulon River. At the mouth of the sea, he had an epiphany and pushed the East River sword technique to a new level. At that time, Lu Ping did not casually replace this sword technique with the Danxia Purple Mist in the core space to condense a new spell talisman. Instead, he used a gentian bead as a medium to imprint this new sword technique talisman into it. Although the brand new East River sword technique was born out of the 12 orthodox techniques of the North Sea which Lu Ping had trained in, it had already broken away from the old East River sword technique and become a brand new divine ability. In fact, it could even be said that Lu Ping had created this sword technique on his own. However, Lu Ping, in consideration of the fact that the 100 rivers flow into the sea technique was a peerless divine ability, he had decided not to replace it with the new East River sword technique. Instead, he had left the old sword technique as the foundation of his divine ability, so as to prevent any accidents from occurring when he became a peerless divine ability. In fact, Lu Ping's considerations were completely correct. The brand new divine ability sword technique that Lu Ping had comprehended from the old East River sword technique could completely rise to become a brand new divine ability sword technique inheritance in the future. If he replaced the new sword technique with the 12 orthodox techniques, the power of the sword technique might skyrocket in a short period of time. However, when it became a peerless divine ability, it would lead to the collapse of the existing system. The 12 orthodox techniques of the North Sea was actually a divine ability inheritance system with the 100 rivers flow into the sea, and the art of vast seas and mulberry fields as its goal. The old East River sword technique was only one part of this system. In order not to affect the 100 rivers flow into the sea sword technique, Lu Ping had copied the new divine ability sword technique he had created into the gentian pearl. In this way, although the new East River sword technique could not become Lu Ping's source divine ability, it could use Lu Ping's source treasure to greatly enhance the sword technique's power. At the same time, Lu Ping could also improve the sword technique's power in the future. 2 days later, Qi Lianying walked into Lu Ping's cave abode. Lu Ping opened his eyes and looked at the serious Qi Lianying. "Have you made up your mind?" Qi Lianying smiled and said, "I've said it before. You must be the first to see my face, and you are the only one who can remove this seal for me." Lu Ping was silent, and Qi Lianying did not speak either. After a while, Qi Lianying said, "Don't worry, I won't make things difficult for you." Lu Ping was stunned, but he did not know what to say. Qi Lianying closed her eyes and sat cross-legged in front of him. Lu Ping looked at the delicate face in front of him and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Who would have thought that there would be another face hidden under such a beautiful face? It's been a long time. The process might be painful, and it might even affect your original appearance. Qi Lianying frowned and said, "Disfigurement? You have to have some confidence in me. It won't be disfigurement, but there may be wrinkles and aging," Lu Ping said helplessly. Qi Lianying's frown deepened as soon as Lu Ping said that. Lu Ping hesitated for a while and said, "There is actually a senior in our sect who is proficient in all kinds of restriction spells. He is Liang Tiafeng Laozi that you met earlier. Why don't, if you want him to remove it for me, you might as well take me to Mei Tianqin. That's more direct." Qi Lianying interrupted Lu Ping's suggestion without hesitation. "If that's not the case, I would have begged your master to remove the restriction spell on my face. Wouldn't that be easier?" Lu Ping was shocked. When Qi Lianying suddenly left without saying goodbye after the battle, Lu Ping knew that she had sensed something. However, when he returned to Soundwave Island, he heard that Qi Lianying had been in seclusion, so he did not disturb her again. His temper was really like that. Lu Ping pulled himself together and asked after a moment of hesitation, "Did you sense something or remember something?" Qi Lianying smiled. "Indeed, it's a feeling that I haven't felt for a long time. It's so complicated that I don't want to face that person again. I'm afraid this is also what you guys have been guessing, right?" Lu Ping was speechless, but Qi Lianying heaved a long sigh and calmed herself down. She said decisively, "Let's do it. I've said it before, only you can see my face. You should have some understanding of my situation in the North Sea. You're making me feel guilty because you insist on doing this. Because of your cultivation partner, Taoist Master Mysterious Fox?" Qi Lianying smiled with a hint of mockery. "I've said it before, I won't make things difficult for you. This is my personal wish. It's up to you whether you accept it or not." Lu Ping's mouth twitched unconsciously. He said helplessly, "I'll remove the restriction on you first." Although this restriction was only sealed by Mei Tianqin when she was in the core forging stage, it was not difficult for Lu Ping now. After all, when Lu Ping's cultivation reached the core forging late stage, he was already very confident. He had never had the chance to come to the East Sea before. Countless streams of light shrouded Qi Lianying's face, and they kept seeping into her face bit by bit, as if they were peeling away something. Lu Ping's method of touching the seals was based on the water seep sword skill, which gave off a feeling of being able to penetrate through every pore of the seal. In just 10 minutes, the streaks of light dissipated, and Qi Lianying's face reappeared in front of Lu Ping. It was unexpected, but also within expectations. The next day, Lu Ping bade farewell to Yin Xianchu, Ji Xianxian, and the others early in the morning. After that, he left some treasures for Wu Yan, Yibuki, and Hong Ying. At the same time, he instructed the three of them before going to the Awakening Island through the teleportation array. After sending Lu Ping off, Ji Xianxian looked at Lu Ping's cave abode and said, "Strange, why didn't Sister Ying come out? Could it be that senior brother Lu didn't remove the restriction on her face?" Yin Xianchu also looked in the direction of the cave abode. He shook his head but did not say anything. Ji Xianxian suddenly chuckled and said, Do you think it's because Sistering is ugly after restoring her appearance? That's why Senior Brother Lu left so early today. Yin Xianchu turned around and looked at Ji Xianxian speechlessly. He said, Impossible! Why is it impossible? Ji Xuanxuan's spirit was shaken. His eyes flickered with excitement as he said, Perhaps there's another possibility. Sistering stayed in Senior Brother Lu's cave abode for an entire night. Do you think it's because he? Yin Xianchu glanced at the distance behind Ji Xianxian. A look of doubt flashed across his face. He then said to Ji Xianxian coldly, Good luck. With that, Yin Xianchu exploded into a cloud of white mist and disappeared. Ji Xianxian was stunned and said, What do you mean? Soon after, he felt a gaze that seemed to be solid piercing towards him from behind. A wave of killing intent suddenly burst forth from Ji Xuanxuan's back. Ji Xuanxuan's mind raced, and he thought to himself, Oh no! He rushed forward. At the same time, when he looked back, he saw Qi Lianying, whose appearance had not changed in the slightest, standing at the entrance of the cave abode. The killing intent on her body was not concealed in the slightest. A pair of daggers had already slashed towards her hands, and her entire body was already flying towards him. Ji Xianxian let out a strange cry. He leaped onto a bald-tailed wooden bird and fled towards the sky with all his might. However, he was puzzled in his heart. Why didn't Senior Brother Lu help her remove the restriction on her face and restore her appearance? In the north of the fallen mystic realm, 2 streaks of light streaked across the sky one after another. They were Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping, who were rushing towards the Phantom City. Just a day ago, Mara's army launched another attack. Currently, the 5 of the 7 lines of defense set up by the overseas sects in the fallen mystic realm had already been broken. They were only 1,000 miles away from the Phantom City. Most of the teleportation formations between the Phantom City and the outside world had already been cut off by the high-level Mara in Mara's army. Because of this, Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping had no choice but to take the risk and fly in the direction of the Phantom City. This time, our sect is not guarding the Phantom City, but a spirit-gathering island in the southwest sea of the Phantom Island. It is also the location of one of the large spirit stone veins. Chapter 10-19. The giant spirit stone vein and the 4 other giant spirit stone veins found in the fallen mystery land were distributed across 5 islands. The illusionary spirit island, where the giant spirit stone vein was located in the center, while the other 4 spirit stone veins were located on the surrounding 4 islands, surrounding the illusionary spirit island in the center. Xingling Island was a medium-sized island located in the southwest corner of Phantom Island. This island was guarded by 5 mid-Dharma adepts all year round. Not only Xingling Island, but the other large spirit stone vein to the northwest of Phantom Island was also occupied by human adepts. This was also the case on Yuanling Island. Furthermore, these 2 large spirit stone veins were jointly owned by 25 mid-sized sections. Hence, the Dharma adepts stationed at these 2 large spirit stone veins were rotated by these 25 mid-sized sections. Every batch of mid-Dharma adepts would be stationed at these 2 spirit stone veins for about 5 years, and these 5 years would coincide with the period when the sects would hand over their share of the spirit stones to each sect. Compared to Yuanling Island, the spirit stone veins on Xingling Island only produced slightly more spirit stones. However, the spirit stone veins on Xingling Island were only supplied to the top 10 sects out of the 25 sects, while the spirit stone veins on Yuanling Island were distributed to the bottom 15 sections. As such, in terms of individual shares, the spirit stones distributed to the top 10 sects were much more than the top 15 sects on Yuanling Island. Each sect's share would vary according to their ranking, and after every 5 ranks, there would be a large change in the sect's share. This meant that the 6th-ranked sect's share might only be slightly higher than the 7th-ranked sect's share, but the 5th-ranked sect's share would be much higher than the 6th-ranked sect's share. During the previous Phantom City Conference, Jinling's sect had managed to enter the top 5 of the overseas mid-sized sects in one fell swoop due to the efforts of the 3 mid-Dharma adepts, Tian Kong, Tian Lin, and Xiang Lu. To the 25 overseas sects, this was already considered a major change in power, and at the same time, it was also an intense conflict of interest. This time, Mo Luo's large-scale advance to the north was obviously aimed at the 5 spirit stone veins on the 5 islands of Phantom. Hence, Phantom City had immediately gathered the Dharma adepts of various large and medium-sized sects from overseas to gather in Phantom City, in preparation to defend against Mo Luo's attack. Originally, these 5 islands were a perfect part of a large natural formation. However, after the war between humans and demons, the 2 large spirit stone veins on the east of Phantom Island were occupied by the demons. After that, the humans and demons came to a compromise. Although the giant spirit stone mine on the illusionary Spirit Island was still occupied by the 9 major overseas sects such as the Crystal Palace, the formations on the 5 islands were still intact. At the same time, as the hub of the large-scale formations on the 5 islands, the illusionary Spirit City had become the largest city in the overseas cultivation world where humans and demons mixed together. Although Phantom Island was the center of the formation on the 5 islands and would definitely be the first target for Mara's army to attack, the other 4 islands also needed Dharma adepts to guard. Tian Kong and Laozu's task was obviously to guard the Spirit Gathering Island, which was where the distribution of spirit stones was. The situation doesn't look good. The situation doesn't look good. The overseas practitioners set up 7 lines of defense in the fallen mystery land. Originally, it was to buy time for the 5 illusory islands to summon the cultivators from the various sections. Unexpectedly, Mara's army was like a hot knife through butter. In the blink of an eye, 5 of the 7 lines of defense were broken. Now, the 6th line is in imminent danger. It is said that no less than 10 Dharma adepts from the allied forces of the human and demon races have fallen. The number of core forging adepts who have died is even more uncountable. There is already news that there are no less than 3 Asuras among the Mara army. 3? Asuras? Lu Ping was taken aback as he looked at the talisman in Laozu's hand that was slowly evaporating after the message was read. Although these one-time use talismans required the use of spatial energy, they were, after all, only used to send messages. Even though Mara had interfered with the spatial energy around the 5 islands, he still could not completely stop the transmission of these spatial talismans. However, activating the teleportation formation could not be so risky. Tian Kong Laozu nodded and said with a serious expression, "Indeed, it seems that Mara's army is determined to win this time. However, you don't have to be so surprised. The Crystal Palace and the 9 sects are not to be trifled with. This time, the situation is so serious that at least 5 of the 9 sects will send their great adepts. The Crystal Palace may even send more than 1 great adept. The 3 major races, the Green Sea Snake, Fire Phoenix, and Kuan, will also send their great adepts. When the time comes, both sides will probably have no less than 12 great adepts. With the power of the formation, it may not be possible for Mara to break through the 5 islands of the illusionary spirits." As Lu Ping listened to such a large lineup, he could not help but be speechless. In the North Sea, a gathering of more than 10 Dharma adepts was already a big event that would shake the entire North Sea training world. Here, there were 12 Dharma adepts. As for the other adepts at the early Dharma stage, how many would there be? Lu Ping felt his mouth go dry as he said bitterly, "This is really a big scene. Even if the Dharma adepts have a long life, how many times can they experience such a big scene in their lifetime?" Tian Kong Laozu also let out a long sigh and said, "Indeed, in such a big battle, powers like yours and mine are already insignificant. The ones who really have the right to speak are the Crystal Palace, the 9 sects, and the 3 major demon tribes of the East Sea. We just need to be careful and not be used as cannon fodder." Lu Ping could hear the lament in Tian Kong Laozu's tone. There was a sense of helplessness towards his own level of practice, and also helplessness towards Jinling's low status. Tian Kong Laozu paused and said, Fortunately, Xian Su, Xian Hun, Xian Pun, Xian Yong, Xian Feng, and Xian Ling have already entered Phantom City 3 days ago. However, Mara's army has yet to break through the 5th line of defense, and the teleportation array with Phantom City has yet to be cut off. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, but still asked, Grand Uncle, the power on Jingling Island is almost gone. What if Mara finds out? Tian Konglauze smiled and said, Don't worry, your Uncle Tia Feng will always be on Jingling Island. At the same time, a batch of core forging disciples from the North Sea should have arrived by now. Hearing this, Lu Ping was slightly relieved. Tian Konglauze said in a low voice, But this time, you and I will fly directly to Phantom City. Although we have already bypassed the direction of Mara's advance, we still hope that we will not be discovered by Mara. As soon as Tian Konglauze's voice fell, Lu Ping was suddenly startled, and then said with a bitter smile, Grand Uncle, it seems that our luck is not too good. Tian Konglauze was startled, and then immediately discovered something. His face suddenly sank, but then he couldn't help but raise his eyes and said, No, it seems that there are people fighting with Mara in front. We have already bypassed the route of Mara's advance. Maybe they just ran into Mara's patrol team. Maybe they are also cultivators rushing to the Phantom 5 Islands like us. When the time comes, we might have to rescue them. They may not have found us yet, so let's sneak over and take a look first. The two held their breath and moved stealthily for a few miles. Lu Ping's brows gradually furrowed. At this time, Tian Konglauze also discovered that something was wrong, and asked doubtfully, Monster cultivator? A strange look flashed in Lu Ping's eyes, and he nodded and said, It is indeed a monster cultivator, and it is a green sea snake. Tian Konglauze let out a low sigh and said, What a strong ability! With the cultivation of the early Dharma stage, he is fighting a jade Shura alone. Even the old man is no better than this. Chu Hyaming did not know why he was so unlucky. The jade Shura didn't seem to be in a good position, either, as she was sent flying dozens of feet away from the surface of the sea. Moreover, if I were to return in such a dejected manner, wouldn't I be mocked to death? Lu Ping said in surprise. Fellow Taoist, this is... Chu Hyaming waved his hand and said, It's nothing. I'm just taking a gamble. Lu Ping secretly cursed. Taking a gamble? Taking a gamble with your life? It seemed that this green sea snake was very much like a playboy. However, his cultivation was really powerful. He was almost no weaker than Wu Shihuan and the others. Seeing that Lu Ping didn't say anything, Chu Hyaming thought that there was still a long way to go before they reached the Phantom City. If he encountered any danger along the way, he might not even have enough time to use his life-saving method. The cultivation of the person in front of him was not weak. It would be a good idea if he could be a companion to this person. As for whether the person in front of him was dangerous or not, Chu Hyaming didn't care, because he had already easily found the aura of the green sea snake on Lu Ping's body. Moreover, there was more than one aura. Every aura on him was very friendly and even intimate. Coupled with this person's demonic chi, it was obvious that he was a demonic cultivator who had a deep relationship with the green sea snake. However, this person had obviously used a secret technique, so Chu Hyaming couldn't see through him. Chu Hyaming opened his mouth and asked, I'm Chu Hyaming. May I know how to address you, fellow Taoist? Where do you plan to go? Lu Ping saw a trace of expectation in Chu Hyaming's eyes, so he said with a smile, I'm Lu Jiao, a rogue cultivator. This time, I heard that Mara is going to besiege the Phantom City. I want to go to the Phantom City to help. Chu Hyaming's eyes lit up. He said, Aha, I'm also going to the Phantom City. Brother Lu, can you come with me? Lu Ping laughed and said, That's my wish, but I wouldn't dare to ask you. Not long after the two of them left the sea, another ray of light landed in the place where the two of them were. Tian Kong Laozi looked at the direction in which the two of them left and shook his head helplessly. He turned around and diverted the two of them, heading towards the Phantom City on another path. Chu Haiming and Lu Ping's ray of light merged into one. Then, he took out a top-grade spirit stone and began to restore the depleted qi in his body. He asked, "Brother Lu, you seem to have a deep relationship with the green sea snakes?" With Lu Ping's current means, he naturally had several ways to conceal the aura of the green sea snakes on his body. However, he deliberately did not conceal it this time. At first, he only wanted to avoid any misunderstandings, and then find a way to get closer to this green sea snake. He did not expect that Chu Haiming would trust him so easily and want to accompany him to the Phantom City. This made the few excuses that Lu Ping had prepared before useless. Lu Ping smiled and said, "I've met fellow Taoist Chu Hailan several times. Sister Lan?" With the help of the Heavenly Mystery Sect's power, the Crystal Palace quickly moved south. The Heavenly Moon Sect was attacked from both front and back, so they immediately gave up 3,000 miles of coastline. The Crystal Palace expanded 500 miles inland before they were once again blocked by the Heavenly Moon Sect. Do you know about the recent outbreak of Mara in the Middle-earth? You don't even know about this? Alright. The situation of the calamity of Mara in the Middle-earth is much more serious than overseas. Furthermore, there seems to be some problems at the border of the Middle-earth. The Holy Lands and big sects of the Middle-earth can't even take care of themselves, so how would they have the spare energy to support the Heavenly Moon Sect? The Heavenly Moon Sect actually had no other choice. In a fit of anger, they had the idea of forming an alliance with our clan. Lu Ping had an expression of sudden realization. He then asked, "From what Brother Chu said earlier, it seems that other than being dragged down by the calamity of Mara, there seems to be some unforeseen events at the border of the Middle-earth. What kind of unforeseen event is it?" Chu Haiming was stunned for a while. Then, he said with some uncertainty, "It seems that a large-scale beast tide has appeared in the western wilderness and the southern mountains. Hee. Who cares what kind of unforeseen event it is? In any case, it has nothing to do with us." Lu Ping nodded his head thoughtfully, then asked, "It's strange. I heard that the Heavenly Moon Sect originally had a deep relationship with the Eastern Sea's Carefree Pavilion, and the Carefree Pavilion has always been at odds with the Crystal Palace. Even if these two sects combined are not a match for the Crystal Palace, the Heavenly Moon Sect can still form an alliance with the other big sects of the Eastern Sea. No matter what, forming an alliance with the aristocrats is not a good idea for the Heavenly Moon Sect." Chu Haiming sneered. "What other choice do they have? In the early years, the Carefree Pavilion was quite prosperous and made the Crystal Palace suffer a few big losses. But now, they are being suppressed by the Crystal Palace. It is said that even their own treasure ship was almost destroyed and the great practitioner on the ship was injured. It is said that they angered the pure Yang Laozu of the Crystal Palace. What about the other four big sects? Are they just going to let the Crystal Palace dominate the Eastern Sea? The other four big sects? Skyrend is tough, but it's a pity that Skyrend is not a native sect of the Eastern Sea. It is said that it was driven out of the Middle-earth thousands of years ago, so its roots in the Eastern Sea are not deep. More than 100 years ago, because of the death of the grandson of a great practitioner of the Kunfish clan, it triggered a war between the two sides. The hatred between the two sides deepened. Until now, they are exhausted and have no strength left to fight against the Crystal Palace." When Lu Ping heard this, the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash in his course space jumped involuntarily. Lu Ping asked, "Just for the grandson of a great practitioner? Isn't this too much of a joke?" "Who said it isn't?" Chu Haiming was also a little confused and said, "There is also a legend that seems to say that Skyren took a great treasure from the Kunfish clan, which caused the Kunfish clan to take revenge so crazily. However, the Kunfish clan has never admitted it." Chapter 1021. To be able to force Skyrim out of Middle-earth to go overseas, what kind of power would that be? Lu Ping asked in surprise. Chu Heiju enjoyed Lu Ping's constant surprise, bewilderment, and astonishment at the secrets he revealed. All of this made Chu Heiju feel a kind of joy that he had never felt before among the green sea snakes. Of course it's the Ziyang Palace. When Skyrim was at his peak, he was much stronger than the Tianxian sect, the Western Wilderness Palace, and the Ying Tian sect. Swordsmen are known as the best cultivators of the same level in terms of attack, and Skyrend was known as the #1 sword sect in the world. This is a direct slap in the face to the Ziyang Palace. Don't you think that Skyrend is seeking death? Although Lu Ping did not believe that the Ziyang Palace would drive Skyrend overseas just because of the title of #1 sword sect in the world, he thought about the current situation of the Tianxian sect. When Skyrend was at his peak, he was probably even more powerful than the Taixian sect. In addition, he had publicly displayed the title of #1 sword sect in the world, and was so arrogant and domineering. It would be strange if the 5 holy lands of Middle-earth did not suppress them. Lu Ping and Chu Heiju traveled together. Lu Ping deliberately tried to find out more information from Chu Heiju, and Chu Heiju was happy to show off his knowledge in front of Lu Ping. At the same time, he was able to make Lu Ping smile with a few subtle compliments. He was obviously a childish and inexperienced person who had not seen much of the world. He had a strong sense of superiority, and was highly valued by his elders. However, although Chu Heiju looked simple, he was very strong. Otherwise, he would not have been able to fight with a Jade Shura for so long with his peak Dharma level cultivation. And although he did not have enough understanding of the dangers of the world, he knew a lot about the secrets of the world of cultivators. The two of them chatted and laughed along the way. Chu Haiming's vanity was greatly satisfied, and Lu Ping also learned many secrets of the Eastern Sea's cultivation world that were unknown to others. In that case, the Gale Thunder Island has a deep connection with the Crystal Palace, and the Purple Talisman Pavilion is a large sect that was developed with the talisman inheritance of this sect after a family in the central region offended the 9 Mystical Tower and escaped to Dahai to seek protection from the Crystal Palace? Chu Haiying nodded her head and said, "There's no mistake." Chu Haiming thought for a while and said, "Actually, it's not just the Purple Talisman Pavilion and Skyrend. Actually, many overseas sects migrated over from the Central Plains, especially the South Sea. Almost all the large sects are not native to the South Sea. They all have inextricable connections with the Central Plains." Lu Ping could not believe it and said, "Could it be that these sects were forced out of the Central Plains cultivation world by the 5 holy lands?" Chu Haiming shook his head and said, "That's not the case. Some of them may have been small or medium-sized forces in the Central Plains back then. Later, they offended someone, or for some other reason, they moved overseas and became stronger. It's not like there are no sects in the South Sea. Back then, most of them maintained their status quo or weakened. Such cases are not only in the East Sea and the South Sea, but also in the North Sea. What about the Northern Alliance? The Northern Alliance seems to have a bad relationship with the Crystal Palace." "The Northern Alliance?" Chu Haiming sneered and said, "It was originally a potential rival of the Crystal Palace. Its strength is considered second only to the Crystal Palace among the sects in the East Sea. However, the Northern Alliance was destined to die from the day it was established. As such, the Northern Alliance is filled with internal strife and unrest. This time, when the East Sea Mara marched north, the Northern Alliance was the first to bear the brunt. In just 2 days, only 1/3 of the islands were plundered by Mara. Isn't this a huge joke?" Lu Ping's expression was a little strange. He said, "You're saying that the Northern Alliance is probably going to fall from the ranks of large sects? It can't be, right? I heard that the Northern Alliance also has 3 or 4 great cultivators. How can it fall just like that after thousands of years of inheritance?" Chu Haiming sneered and said, "What if the 3 or 4 great cultivators start fighting among themselves?" Lu Ping was stunned and didn't know what to say. Chu Haiming saw that Lu Ping still didn't believe him, but he didn't explain much. He said, "We'll see. This time, after the Phantom City incident, the Northern Alliance will probably be surrounded by wolves. This is an external force, and also the last straw. After all, the Northern Alliance has thousands of years of inheritance. Although it's still not systematic, it's impossible for it to have accumulated a lot of good things. When the time comes, the Northern Alliance will collapse even if it doesn't." Lu Ping suddenly asked, "Brother Chu, did you analyze all of this yourself?" Chu Haiming was stunned when he heard this. His face turned red as he said, "Well, some of this is what I heard from the seniors in the clan, and some of it is my own speculation. In short, Brother Lu, just wait and see." The expression on Chu Haiming's face didn't escape Lu Ping's eyes. Lu Ping's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile and he said, "All right, let me wait and see." The two of them ran all the way. Because Chu Haiming had used up a lot of his energy, he had to split his attention to recover the spiritual qi in his body through spiritual stones while flying. Their speed had slowed down a lot. Lu Ping looked ahead and suddenly asked, "Brother Chu, this is the first time you've left the deep sea demon territory, right?" Chu Haiming didn't know what Lu Ping meant. He was stunned for a moment and said, "Yes, what's wrong?" Lu Ping took out a pair of flying swords and said with a bitter smile, "You didn't run away from home, did you?" When Chu Haiming saw Lu Ping take out his flying swords, he thought that Mara, who had escaped earlier, had followed them again. His expression couldn't help but tense up. He said, "What's wrong? Did we run into Mara's team again? How unlucky." As he said this, he took out a short spear. Lu Ping glanced at the short spear. When Chu Haiming was fighting with the Jade Shura, the defensive magic weapon he had used was a magic weapon at the peak of spirit cultivation. He had relied on this short spear to fight against the Jade Shura. He could clearly see that this short spear was a first tribulation spirit treasure. Spirit treasures were extremely rare items for huge forces like the Emerald Sea Spirit Serpent and the Crystal Palace. Unless one was an extremely important person, they were not qualified to wield a spirit treasure. This also showed that Chu Haidong's position in the Emerald Sea Spirit Serpent clan was probably extremely high. The higher-ups of the Emerald Sea Spirit Serpent clan had actually bestowed him a spirit treasure to protect himself. Lu Ping's aura had already exploded. The turbulent spiritual qi of heaven and earth surged in all directions. Even Chu Haiming, who was beside him, began to move away unconsciously. Lu Ping sighed helplessly and said, "It's not Mara. There might be some misunderstanding later. Brother Chu, please explain." "What?" Chu Haiying was baffled by his words. However, just as he finished speaking, a sharp sound of something tearing through the air suddenly rang out from the distant sea. Chu Haiming abruptly raised his head and looked into the distance, only to find that a long sword had already appeared in front of Lu Ping. Chu Haiming looked at the long sword that had suddenly appeared in front of Lu Ping. His eyes suddenly lit up. Then he thought of something and was about to open his mouth to shout, but he suddenly heard a strong sound of metal clashing. Clang! Lu Ping's expression changed. The thin water-flowing sword wailed. In the end, the long sword that had suddenly appeared was blocked by Lu Ping. However, a huge force of spiritual essence came from the two swords. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and pushed forward. The thin water-flowing sword flew to the sides, breaking free of the huge force attached to the swords. At the same time, as Lu Ping withdrew his palm, a wave immediately formed in front of Lu Ping. It collided with the hidden force in midair, immediately stirring up a spiritual qi tsunami that was dozens of feet high. The clouds in the sky were instantly pierced through, and a huge hole appeared. Sunlight shone through the hole and a pillar of golden light shone down. Lu Ping pressed his hands down, and the surrounding spiritual qi storm was immediately suppressed. Even the sea under his feet suddenly became as smooth as a mirror. There was not a single ripple. Lu Ping stood in the same place from beginning to end. Only the two flying swords returned to Lu Ping's body and danced around him. The soft sound of the sword seemed to be complaining of infinite grievances. Chu Hyaming, who had been shocked by the previous attack, suddenly thought of something. He hurriedly flew in front of Lu Ping and waved his long arms in the direction of the previous sharp sound. He shouted, "Blue Sky Sword, it's Blue Sky Sword! Big Brother Tsunami, is that you? Brother Lu is my good friend. Don't misunderstand." Lu Ping narrowed his eyes. Tsunami? Could it be Chu Haitian, the one known as the strongest disciple of the third generation of the Green Sea Snakes, Chu Haitian? A tall cultivator in his 20s, dressed in green clothes, walked over the sea. His cold and solemn face carried a dense killing intent. However, when he looked at Lu Ping, there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. Lu Ping knew very well what that look meant. It was the joy of meeting a worthy opponent. "Big Brother Tsunami, why are you here? I was going to Phantom City to look for you." When Chu Hyaming saw the person in front of him, there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. Then, there was a hint of embarrassment. However, he still hurriedly went forward to greet him. A smile suddenly appeared on his cold and solemn face. The chill immediately dissipated. Chu Haitian glanced at Lu Ping and said to the approaching Chu Hyaming, "You're quite bold. Not only did you secretly escape from the deep-sea demon region, but you also stole Uncle's Blue Scales spear. Just wait to be punished by the Laozu when you return to the tribe." Chu Hyaming's face turned bitter. Then, he chuckled and said, "I'm just bored in the tribe. I heard that Big Brother is going to fight Mara in Phantom City, so I rushed over to help Big Brother and contribute to the tribe. However, when the time comes, I'll have to ask Big Brother Xiao to put in a good word for me. The tribe's elders are most obedient to Big Brother." Chu Haitian's face turned cold. He said, "I don't have that kind of face. Do you know how much chaos you've caused in the tribe by going out on your own? If you encounter danger or someone with ulterior motives, you won't even know that you've been tricked by someone who doesn't understand how sinister people can be." As Chu Haitian spoke, his eyes were fixed on Lu Ping. Clearly, the person with evil intentions was Lu Ping. Chu Hyaming didn't realize it himself. He said, "Don't look down on me. This time, I fought a Jade Shura." Chu Hyaming told Chu Haitian what had happened after he left the Green Sea Snake tribe. In the end, he said, "If Big Brother Lu hadn't come this time, I'm afraid I would have been at a disadvantage. How could Big Brother Xiao fight Big Brother Lu as soon as he arrived?" There was a hint of dissatisfaction in his voice. It seemed that he didn't approve of what Chu Haitian had done. Chu Haixiao ignored Chu Haiming's rebuke. He looked straight at Lu Ping and said, "I don't care why you approached my younger brother, or if you're acquainted with that cultivator from my clan. But since you've saved my younger brother, I'll let it go this time. But if I find out that you've tried to approach my younger brother again, I don't mind challenging you to a duel." After that, Chu Haitian pulled Chu Hyaming's head and left. Chu Hyaming turned around and said, "Big Brother Lu, don't be angry." Before he could finish speaking, Chu Haixiao directly used his spatial sacred art and pulled Chu Haidong into the spatial door. Lu Ping couldn't help but laugh. Then, he heard Chu Hai's voice in his ears. "The Demon Luo army is about to break through the 6th line of defense. You're alone. If you have nothing else to do, don't stay in the fallen mystic realm." Chapter 1022. Chu Haitian's news shocked Lu Ping greatly. How long had it been? How could the 6th line of defense be broken? Lu Ping was deeply worried. It wasn't because he was worried that something would happen to the 5 islands of Mystic Spirit City, but because according to what old ancestor Tian Kong had said, the 7th line of defense was actually less than 100 miles away from Mystic Spirit City. Once the 6th line of defense was breached, Mo Luo's army would be at the city gates. The 5 islands of Mystic Spirit City would basically be surrounded by Mo Luo. If that was the case, Lu Ping was now faced with 2 choices. One was to return to Jingzhi Island immediately. But if he did that, Jinling Sek's share of spirit stones in Phantasmal Spirit City would be lost. The other was to head to Phantasmal Spirit City and meet up with Ancestor Tian Kong. But if he did that, once the sixth line of defense was breached by the time Lu Ping arrived at Phantasmal Spirit City, he would have no choice but to defend Phantasmal Spirit City. He didn't believe he could break out of the Demon Luo army's siege alone. A layer of water rippled on Lu Ping's face. The water rippled gradually and gradually spread to Lu Ping's whole body. Then, a layer of water sprinkled from Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping had already returned to his original appearance. At the same time, Lu Ping stretched out his wrist and took off a bracelet on his wrist. The surging demonic qi on Lu Ping's body suddenly changed into pure spirit qi waves. Then, it gradually converged, making Lu Ping look like an ordinary person. The bracelet was naturally the demon transformation bracelet. With this bracelet, a human cultivator could disguise as a demon cultivator, and would be extremely difficult to recognize. Similarly, when it was worn by a demon cultivator, it would also be extremely difficult for a human to recognize it. Previously, on a whim, Lu Ping decided to rescue Chu Haiyan alone and let Tiankong Laozu rush to Phantom City first. However, just in case, Lu Ping still did not reveal his true identity. Lu Ping's original intention was to get close to the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan. But who knew he would meet someone like Chu Hai, who clearly had a high status in the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan but wasn't a scheming person. Naturally, Lu Ping was more than happy to learn more secrets about the East Sea's forces from him. Unfortunately, he met Chu Haitian midway and took Chu Haiyan away, which messed up Lu Ping's original plan. However, at least he had left a backup plan among the Green Sea Snakes. Although Chu Hailan might be of help to him when he entered the Green Sea Snakes in the future, this woman was too shrewd. If Lu Ping wanted to use her, he might not be able to do so without paying some price. A cloud of water mist gathered under Lu Ping's feet and gradually condensed into a white cloud. Unless those big shots are willing to let their disciples become cannon fodder like us. Not necessarily. Now that the sixth line of defense has collapsed, many practitioners from the big sects have been injured or killed. If they shrink back to the seventh line of defense, or even retreat to the Phantom City, then let's wait for death. From here to the Phantom City, we can't get rid of the group of Mara chasing us. 5 or 6 human practitioners were flying over the sea, with injuries all over their bodies. Obviously, they had been through a fierce battle. At the same time, they were fiercely arguing about something. Suddenly, several sharp howls rang out from behind the cultivators. The cultivators who were flying away immediately lost their ability to move and nearly fell into the ocean. Oh no, it's the great devil cultivators. They're catching up. At this moment, several lights of different colors rose up a few miles in front of them, heading toward them. Oh no, we're surrounded. Why are there more in front of us? Let's fight. Later, we'll break out of the encirclement with our own strength. If there's no hope, it's best if we can drag one of them down with us. The 6 practitioners at the late stage of the core forging realm gathered back to back. In just a moment, more than 20 Mara surrounded them on the sea. The leader of the Great Shura had rich origin chi all over his body. The companion magic treasure in his hand was obviously only one step away from being promoted to a spiritual treasure. Looking at the 6 core forging stage cultivators in the center, the Great Shura's greedy eyes flashed with excitement. As long as he could devour the 6 cultivators in front of him, with the huge amount of chi, blood, and spiritual power contained in them, he might be able to break through the shackles and become a blood Shura. The Great Shura howled at the sky, and more than 20 Mara around it roared in unison and rushed toward the 6 practitioners. At this moment, the surrounding seawater was turbulent, and the waves reflecting the sunlight suddenly turned into daggers, shooting toward the back of the 20 Mara who were besieging the practitioners. Seeing that the 20 Mara were about to be drowned by the water swords, the whole space suddenly shook. These water swords suddenly turned into water splashes in midair and fell into the sea, like a rapid rain. However, just as the raindrops were about to fall back into the sea, the surrounding space trembled again. The raindrops that filled the sky did not fall back into the sea but shot out abruptly. The dozen or so demons surrounding the south were caught off guard, and 7 or 8 of them had their heads, hearts, and other vital parts pierced by the raindrops. The remaining half were rolling and wailing on the surface of the sea. The sudden turn of events caused the battle between the two sides to come to a temporary halt. The great Azura in the lead cast a bewildered look around. Knowing that reinforcements had arrived, the 6 human cultivators who were besieged earlier hastily flew out from the encirclement. Roar! An angry roar suddenly rang out. It was the blood demon. The few human cultivators who had broken out of the encirclement were all pale, but they saw countless auspicious clouds suddenly rising in front of them. Although the blood demon's soul-devouring divine art had shaken these people to the point that their heads felt like it was going to split open, not a single one of them died. The auspicious clouds gradually dispersed, and a young cultivator was standing in front of them. More than 1,000 feet in front of this young cultivator, a rolling black fog had also appeared in front of the remaining Mara. For some reason, the two sides just stood there, and no one attacked. Although the 6 human cultivators could not sense the cultivation of this cultivator who had suddenly appeared in front of them, it was undoubtedly Fa Xiang Laozu who could stand against the blood demon. Among the 6 human cultivators, the one with the highest cultivation was a peak core forging cultivator. With a thought, he hurriedly said, "Let's retreat first." With that, he flew back first. The other 5 cultivators also seemed to wake up at this moment, and they hurriedly followed. However, they heard the friar say to the young cultivator, "Senior, the 6th line of defense has collapsed. The Mara's army is large-scale encirclement and suppression of the human and demon cultivators who have fled. We can't stay here for long." As soon as he finished speaking, the young cultivator suddenly stretched out his hand and flicked his finger. Dozens of water snakes suddenly sprang up from the seawater under the blood demon's feet and entered the rolling poisonous fog. The poisonous fog immediately began to churn, and the poisonous fog that was originally 3 meters wide began to shrink rapidly. It seemed that the dozens of water snakes could wear down the poisonous fog around the blood demon. At this moment, a shrill cry suddenly came from within the poisonous fog. The dozens of water snakes suddenly burst out of the poisonous fog, but their bodies were covered in a layer of black fog, and they counterattacked in the direction of the young cultivator. The cultivator stretched out his hand and pointed forward, and the dozens of black water snakes that rushed towards him suddenly exploded in midair. The thick black fog dispersed, and then dissipated in midair. However, there were also several black snakes that bypassed the cultivator in front of him and shot towards the 6 cultivators behind him. The human cultivators were all shocked, and in a fluster, they did not know how to block this strange attack. Suddenly, they heard a crisp cry above their heads. A golden wing ping was hovering above them, and at this moment, it swooped down and easily tore the black water snakes into pieces with its sharp claws. Chapter 1023. While Lu Ping was fighting with the blood demon, the great Azura leader among the group of Azura behind the blood demon glanced at the 6 human cultivators a few hundred feet behind Lu Ping, then at Lu Ping, who was entangled by the blood demon. His eyes darted around for a moment, then he led a dozen of his subordinates and split into 2 groups to flank the 6 human cultivators. The human cultivators quickly discovered Mo Luo's intentions. When the peak core forging cultivator saw 2 cultivators trying to escape, he hurriedly stopped them and said, "Where can we escape to at this time? There are Mo Luos surrounding the human and demon cultivators everywhere. At least if we follow this ancestor, we might be able to break out of the encirclement." One of the 2 cultivators who wanted to escape looked at Lu Ping with a complicated expression and said, "But this senior is entangled by the blood demon. He can't even take care of himself, let alone help us. If we escape, at least we have a chance of surviving. If we don't escape, we won't be able to get through this. The Mara group has already surrounded us." The other cultivator who wanted to escape was originally persuaded by the first cultivator, but after hearing the second cultivator's words, his expression became hesitant. Seeing that the group of 6 was about to split up, the peak core forging realm cultivator became anxious. Now was the time to unite against the enemy. Once someone left, the chance of survival would be even lower. He said coldly, "Lu Yongchang, you have to think carefully. How much strength do we have left? Even if you want to escape, how long can you escape? Besides, if you take this opportunity to escape, even if you survive, you won't be afraid of offending this senior in the future. He saved us before." The peak core forging cultivator called Lu Yongchang paused for a moment. His expression became gloomy, as if he had thought of a bad situation. He looked at the cultivator who wanted to leave with him, and saw that he was unwilling to leave. His expression became even more gloomy, but in the end, he didn't leave. Seeing this, the peak core forging realm cultivator relaxed and hurriedly ordered the 5 of them to prepare to fight the enemy. The young Dharma adept who had saved them was naturally Lu Ping. While Lu Ping was fighting with the blood demon in front of him, his powerful divine will had heard every word of the previous conversation. Lu Ping's lips curled into a mocking smile. He looked at the blood demon in front of him and felt that he had forced it to use all its tricks. He no longer wanted to tangle with it. His powerful divine will turned into layers of waves in midair and rushed towards the blood demon, who was surrounded by the soul-devouring black fog. The blood demon was overjoyed. Previously, it had tried to use its soul-devouring magic to severely injure the human cultivator in front of it. Unexpectedly, it was unable to detect the presence of divine will around this human cultivator. This time, the human cultivator in front of it had taken the initiative to reveal his divine will to it. Furthermore, this human cultivator was stupid enough to fight it with his divine will. When fighting with a blood demon, the stronger one's divine will was, the safer it would be. On the contrary, to the blood demon, the stronger the divine will was, the more tempting it would be and the more it would be able to stimulate its desire to kill. Moreover, although the blood demon's soul-devouring magic had different forms, they were all killer moves that specialized in restraining a cultivator's divine will. From the soul-devouring black fog, an irregular crystal appeared. This must be the spiritual treasure of the blood demon in front of him. Lu Ping's divine will could sense an invisible wave suddenly burst out from this crystal. This wave was full of greed and erosion, rushing towards Lu Ping's divine will. Although this invisible soul-devouring magic will was not as strong and vigorous as Lu Ping's divine will, it contained an invisible corrosive force. It had a natural ability to devour divine will. It fiercely rushed towards the center of Lu Ping's divine will wave. Lu Ping's divine will suddenly collapsed when the blood demon's soul-devouring magic will rushed towards him. The soul-devouring magic will suddenly missed. Seeing that the delicacy was right in front of it, the blood demon condensed its soul-devouring magic will again and pounced over. However, it did not expect Lu Ping's divine will to shrink again, and the blood demon missed again. After missing twice, the blood demon's soul-devouring magic will had unknowingly jumped into the encirclement of Lu Ping's divine will along the path opened by Lu Ping's divine will. However, the blood demon still did not notice, or rather, it did not think that this trick of Lu Ping's would have any effect in front of its soul-devouring magic will. At this moment, a bell suddenly sounded in Lu Ping's divine will. A strange wave rushed towards the blood demon's soul-devouring magic will. It was like throwing a stone into a calm lake. Although it was not enough to cause a huge wave, it was enough to change everything. The sudden sound of the bell directly sounded in the blood demon's divine will without warning. This caused the blood demon's soul-devouring magic will to have an imperceptible pause in the process of casting it. However, at this moment, it was enough for Lu Ping's divine will to cut off the soul-devouring magic will's escape route. A flame suddenly ignited in Lu Ping's divine will. The flame spread rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, it completely surrounded the soul-devouring magic will. At this moment, the blood demon finally realized that something was wrong. This flame that directly affected the soul-devouring magic will could actually threaten it. The crystal stone once again floated up from the soul-devouring black fog, and waves of invisible waves rushed towards Lu Ping again. It seemed to want to rescue the soul-devouring magic well that was trapped by Lu Ping's green phosphorus soul fire. Unexpectedly, a small banner suddenly appeared in Lu Ping's hand. The small banner gently waved in Lu Ping's hand, and a group of auspicious clouds formed outside Lu Ping's divine will. The invisible waves that the blood demon couldn't resist immediately destroyed half of the auspicious clouds. However, the auspicious clouds seemed to be endless. The more they were destroyed, the more they formed. The blood demon's divine will was no longer able to pose a threat to Lu Ping's divine will. A bead that emitted a multicolored light floated up and down in Lu Ping's divine will. The multicolored light suddenly converged, and a layer of green light emerged from the bead. A flame flickered more and more violently in the gentian bead. The green phosphorus soul fire attached to Lu Ping's divine will suddenly expanded, and from all directions, it pressed towards the soul-devouring magic will that was trapped inside. A mournful howl suddenly came from the soul-devouring black fog. Whether it was the cultivators behind Lu Ping or the dozens of Mara that were outflanking them, all of them were shocked. Then they felt as if a sharp knife had suddenly pierced into their brains and twisted them ruthlessly. The blood demon suddenly pounced towards Lu Ping. The black fog surrounding its body suddenly expanded, and like a layer of black sky, it covered Lu Ping. Lu Ping was unmoved. The green phosphorus soul fire in his divine will rose again. The soul-devouring magic will was like a lit candle, and it quickly began to melt. Then, the green phosphorus soul fire suddenly appeared, and the soul-devouring magic will also began to burn, and the burning became more and more vigorous. Under the worried gazes of the cultivators, the soul-devouring black fog around Blood Demon was about to envelop Lu Ping. But suddenly, like snow under a bright light, the soul-devouring black fog melted away even faster than it rose. The mournful howl still came out from the black fog, but it no longer had the soul-tearing feeling from before. Instead, there was a panic and helplessness, as if the end of the world was approaching. Bang! A green flame suddenly ignited from the remaining soul-devouring black fog. However, there was no more howl coming from the black fog. Lu Ping had already retracted his divine will. He quietly looked at the green phosphorus soul fire that was burning several tens of feet away. In fact, the blood demon's innate skill was destroyed by Lu Ping's jade phosphorus soul fire using his divine sense as bait. Now, what was burning was only the blood demon's body and the cloud of soul mist. Above the blood demon's burning body, a faintly discernible bead floated in midair. Huh! Lu Ping moved his divine sense and pointed at the burning jade phosphorus soul fire. A crystal that wasn't burning but was rapidly melting suddenly jumped out from the jade phosphorus soul fire. The moment it floated in the air, the primary chin bead that had fused with the jade phosphorus soul fire suddenly fell down and stuck together with the melting crystal. The irregular crystal was none other than the blood demon's companion treasure that Lu Ping had encountered before. Although it was not destroyed by the green phosphorus soul fire, it had begun melting after the blood demon's death. At present, not even half of it remained. The green phosphorus soul fire within the gentian bead began pulsing rapidly. Lu Ping's divine will could sense the remnant soul power of the blood demon's essence within the crystal, which was in the process of being absorbed. The dozen or so Mara, who were moving to flank Lu Ping, saw the sudden reversal of the situation. The blood demon, which was originally imposing, had turned into a green fireball in the blink of an eye. The leading Great Azura turned around and fled. The other Mara also scattered when they saw that the situation was not good. The cultivators were overjoyed when they saw this. The peak core forging cultivator shouted, "Everyone, let's chase after them and kill as many as we can. We can't let them escape so easily." As soon as he finished speaking, they heard Lu Ping's voice. "There's no need. They can't run away." The cultivators were stunned. They saw a white light suddenly flash in front of the leading Great Azura, and its head immediately flew up. Then, the white light flipped, and the companion treasure in the Great Azura's hand disappeared into it. When it reappeared, it was already in Lu Ping's hand. The white light flashed behind Lu Ping and disappeared. From beginning to end, the cultivators did not see what the white light was. Then, they saw Lu Ping draw a circle under his feet. With Lu Ping as the center, a ring of water rose from the sea more than 100 feet away. When the Mara flew in front of the ring of water, they were all bounced back by the confinement of the space there. No matter what they did, they could not break through the range of the ring of water. Lu Ping smiled and gently swept his right hand as if he was playing a zither. Countless splashes of water splashed from the sea and turned into crystal water swords. They shot toward the dozen or so Mara who were trying to break through the restraints of the ring of water, killing them one by one. Only then did Lu Ping turn around to look at the cultivators behind him. He smiled and was about to speak when he heard one of them suddenly exclaim, "Water Sword Immortal! He's the North Sea Water Sword Immortal!" Chapter 1024. Water Sword Immortal! He's the Northern Sea Water Sword Immortal, Lu Tianping! Lu Ping was slightly startled. He saw that the person who cried out in surprise was the cultivator with the highest cultivation level among the people he rescued earlier. When the others heard that the person in front of them was actually the famous Northern Sea Water Sword Immortal, they also revealed astonished expressions. Obviously, they weren't unfamiliar with Lu Ping's name. Only Lu Yongchang's expression remained calm, as if he already knew who the person in front of him was. Among the crowd of excited cultivators, he was somewhat conspicuous. Lu Ping inadvertently glanced at Lu Yongchang and smiled at the peak core forging cultivator. "May I ask how I should address fellow Taoist?" "I'm Northern Sea Water Sword Immortal, Lu Tianping. Since fellow Taoist knows me, are you also a Northern Sea cultivator?" The cultivator cast a strange glance at Lu Yongchang and hastily saluted. "I don't dare to be addressed as such by Tianping Laozu. Junior isn't a Northern Sea cultivator. I'm Niexing, a disciple of the Eastern Sea Zixia sect. Tianping Laozu's name has shaken the overseas cultivation world. He's a first-class existence among the third-generation cultivators. Junior was fortunate enough to see a portrait of Senior's appearance that was circulated in the Eastern Sea, so I recognize you." Lu Ping also recognized the Eastern Sea Zixia sect. It was a medium-sized cultivation sect in the Eastern Sea. Like Zhenling, it was one of the 25 medium-sized cultivation sects in the Spirit Stone vein on the 5 islands of Phantom Spirit. However, the strength of this Zixia sect was slightly inferior to Zhenling. Among the 25 medium-sized cultivation sects, it could still be considered a rather powerful cultivation sect. Lu Ping chuckled and said, "So it turns out to be Brother Nye from Zixia sect. Presumably, Brother Nye is also a third-generation disciple of your noble sect. You and I are of the same generation. Calling me senior instead makes me feel uncomfortable all over." Niexing didn't expect Lu Ping to be so easy to talk to, so he couldn't help but relax a lot. He also smiled and said, "In that case, I'll also call you Brother Lu." Seeing Niexing like this, several people also stepped forward to salute Lu Ping. These people were actually third-generation cultivators from the 25 cultivation sections. Among them, 2 were from the Eastern Sea, and 2 were from the Southern Sea. In the end, only Lu Yongchang, who suggested taking this opportunity to escape, was left. Everyone looked at him. Niexing's lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, the crowd's silence increased the pressure on Lu Yongchang. He had no choice but to bite the bullet and step forward to salute Lu Ping. "I am Lu Yongchang from the Tsanghai sect." Everyone's silence greatly increased the pressure on Lu Yongchang. He had no choice but to brace himself and step forward to salute Lu Ping. He said, "I'm Lu Yongchang from Azure Sea sect. Greetings, Brother Lu." Lu Yongchang's expression turned awkward. Little did he know that Lu Ping had already seen through his plan to escape during his battle with the Blood Demon. Lu Yongchang's expression turned awkward. Originally, Lu Ping held Lu Yongchang in contempt, but after hearing that he was a cultivator from Azure Sea sect, he somewhat understood. This guy didn't completely want to escape. Most likely, he wanted to avoid Lu Ping. Currently, everyone in the Northern Sea cultivation world knew about the situation between Azure Sea sect and Jinling. Jiang Tianlin had chased after Zhang Shi for several years, and Zhang Shi had fled to the Eastern Sea in defeat. However, not long after, there were rumors that Lu Tianping had received Jiang Tianlin's decree and arrived in the Eastern Sea. Most likely, he was here for Zhang Shi. Whether this rumor was true or not, Lu Yongchang was unwilling to face Lu Ping. Moreover, he had been saved by Lu Ping from Mara, so he was at a loss in front of Lu Ping. Just as Lu Yongchang was panicking, Lu Ping suddenly asked, "When will Senior Zhang Shi arrive at Phantom City?" Lu Yongchang was startled and said, "How did you know?" Lu Yongchang's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly stopped talking, but it was already too late. He only heard Lu Ping say with a smile, "Senior Zhang's speed is indeed faster than mine. I just don't know if there are any more Azure Sea sect disciples like Brother Lu who have fallen into the 6th line of defense. Otherwise, I'm afraid your sect won't be able to afford to lose them. Senior Zhang might even take the risk to come out and save them." Lu Yongchang's expression was filled with hatred. Hearing this, he immediately raised his head and said, You actually knew about me?" Lu Ping shook his head and said, "Although I haven't met you, I have heard of Brother Lu's name for a long time. After all, the 8 sons of Azure Sea have long been famous in the Northern Sea." Lu Yongchang was restrained in front of Lu Ping, so he simply snorted coldly and said, "I can't compare to Brother Lu." Niexing, who was at the side, also understood at this time that these two sects of the Northern Sea were obviously not on good terms. However, at this time, everyone still needed the protection of Lu Ping, the Dharma idol Laozu, so he hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Brother Lu's reputation is naturally unquestionable. He is in existence that even Wu Shihuan of the Crystal Palace and Yuan Feixiang of the Central Plains greatly admire. I just don't know if Brother Lu is going to Phantom City this time. If so, can you let us go with Brother Lu?" The others also understood the situation at this time and said one after another, "Brother Nye is right. Brother Lu's name has long resounded in our ears." "If we can go with Brother Lu this time, we will all be honored." Lu Yongchang was furious, but there was nothing he could do. He could only force himself to remain silent. Lu Ping smiled and nodded, then asked, "That's good. Brother Nye is also going to Phantom City, but Mara actually chased you all the way here. Could it be that there's a problem with the 6th line of defense?" Niexing and the others looked at each other, and could not help but look a little dejected. Seeing that Lu Ping did not understand, in the end, it was Niexing who explained what had happened to Lu Ping. Lu Ping's expression suddenly changed. He said, "What?" The 6th line of defense did not even hold for a day, and both the Jade Shura and the Azura attacked? Niexing nodded and said, "Only a small number of people managed to escape back to Phantom City through the teleporter. Most of them either died or fled in all directions. Just based on the news I heard, there were at least 4 or 5 Dharma adepts who died. Now, Mara's army is on the sea surrounding the fleeing adepts, and the 7th line of defense of Phantom City is about to be completed. If we do not reach Phantom City before the encirclement is complete, I'm afraid we can only wait for Mara's encirclement." Lu Ping's expression was dark. He opened his hand and threw out a treasure that looked like a small boat. The treasure expanded in midair, and it turned into a small boat that could fit a few people. It was the boat that Lu Ping had not used in a long time. Lu Ping stepped into the boat and said coldly, "What are you waiting for? Let's go." Niexing and the others were stunned at first, then overjoyed. They all stepped into the boat. Lu Yongchang hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he was the last to step into the boat. The boat rose into the air, leaving a blue trail in midair, and then disappeared into the horizon. In the boat, Lu Ping's expression was very ugly. He had not thought that the situation would be this bad. At this time, even the road to Phantom City was filled with danger. Even if he managed to break through Mara's encirclement and enter Phantom City, he was afraid that he would not be able to return to Phantom City for a while. Furthermore, if there was a way to return, the great adepts of the various sects would use the excuse of concentrating their strength to protect the 5 islands of Phantom City and gather all the forces on the islands. Lu Ping forced himself to calm down and swallowed a spirit pill. He slowly recovered the divine will that he had used in the battle with the blood demon. Originally, it would not have been difficult for Lu Ping to defeat the blood demon. The reason why he had gone through so much trouble was because Lu Ping wanted to test the power of the gentian pearl after it had fused with the jade phosphorus soul fire. In reality, this effect did not disappoint Lu Ping. After Lu Ping used his powerful divine will as bait to set up this trap, the jade phosphorus soul fire was able to break the blood demon's soul-devouring divine will and cause it to backfire, burning the blood demon to death. Recently, Lu Ping was very satisfied with the crystal-like spiritual treasure. Although the spiritual treasure had perished when Mara had died, Lu Ping had still managed to absorb a lot of the soul origin of the spiritual treasure through the gentian pearl that had fused with the jade phosphorus soul fire before it had completely perished. Although the soul origin of the spiritual treasure was not even a quarter of the spiritual treasure, Lu Ping could still sense that as the jade phosphorus soul fire gradually turned the soul origin of the spiritual treasure into its own, the quality of the gentian pearl would be greatly improved. The 8th restriction would be completed before the other 11 gentian pearls, and the speed at which the 9th restriction would be condensed would also be greatly accelerated. Other than that, there was also the Great Shura leading the group of demonic Asuras. It was obvious that this Great Shura was on the verge of becoming a Blood Shura. The Great Shura's essence had already reached the critical point. The reason why Lu Ping had risked his life to surround Yexing and the others during the battle with the blood demons was most likely because of the blood essence in their bodies. What Lu Ping had originally valued was the water attribute essence Qi of this Great Asura. Although it was not as pure and thick as the blood Asuras, and could not play any role in improving Lu Ping's own cultivation, it could be used to nourish the thin water-flowing sword, which had been damaged in the previous 2 battles. The thin water-flowing sword was a top-notch spirit-nurturing magic treasure that had condensed 9 treasure restrictions. After the 2 swords were combined and used by Lu Ping, their power was even not inferior to that of an ordinary First Tribulation spiritual treasure. But the quality of the thin water-flowing sword was still inferior to that of a real spiritual treasure. Whether it was the previous battle with the 3-headed blood demon Mara, or the previous move with Chu Haitian, they were all clashes of strength that could not be taken lightly. But the other party's hands, without exception, were all genuine spiritual treasures. In this way, the difference in quality between the thin water-flowing sword and the 3-headed blood demon sword was reflected. If Lu Ping's real essence had not been pure and explosive enough to make up for the shortcomings of the thin water-flowing sword, perhaps the damage to this pair of flying swords would not have been able to be recovered by Lu Ping through the nourishment of the essence Qi of the water attribute. Fortunately, Lu Ping's luck was good. After the Great Asura died, it left behind its accompanying magic treasure. This was a companion magic treasure that was about to be promoted to a spiritual treasure. Compared to the essence Qi emitted after the Great Asura's death, the thin water-flowing sword was undoubtedly more suitable for the thin water-flowing sword. At this time, this companion magic treasure, which could become a spirit-nurturing magic treasure after being modified by a craftsman, had already turned into a pool of essence Qi in Linglong's wine tripod. The thin water-flowing sword was like a pair of swimming fish, playing in this pool of essence. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.